May the 6th of 2025. Ended up having a nice tour of the roads in North Ogden and the amount of work that needs to be done. And in fact, our folks from Public Works, driving wasn't that great, but the explanation of the roads was really good. Our escort got a little lost occasionally, but on that. But other than that, we had a really nice tour, and I think got a feel for the condition of the roads in North Ogden, which we'll probably be talking about a little bit as we talk about the transportation utility fee. We appreciate Mr. Kevin Burns being with us this evening. I believe Kevin is going to give us a thought, an invocation at his choice, whatever that is, and then lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Well, let's see how this goes.
Okay.
Let's pray.
All right, let's do it.
Dear Lord, we gather here today with a sense of purpose and responsibility. As we begin this meeting, we seek your guidance and wisdom. Help us to approach our discussions with open minds and respectful hearts. Grant us the ability to listen deeply, speak thoughtfully, and make decisions that serve the common good. May our efforts be guided by integrity, compassion, and a commitment to justice. Bless our community and all those who are part of it. We ask for your presence to be with us, leading us towards unity and understanding. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Please rise and say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Burns. Appreciate your involvement in our city. Thank you so much. We'll move on to our conflict of interest disclosures. If anyone has any at this time, would be the time to mention those. Anybody have any potential conflicts? Okay, we see none. We'll move on. You should have received the April 1st, 2025 and the April 8th, 2025 City Council meeting minutes. Hopefully you had a chance to review those and make any comments. Ryan, are there any further comments at this point in time on the minutes? Now I would seek a motion to approve those two City Council minutes of April 1st and April 8th of 2025. Have a motion by Councilmember Severin and a second by Councilmember Pulver. Any further discussion or thought? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. I see unanimous approval of that motion. At this point in time, we'll move into our active agenda, and if anyone would like to make public comments, we don't have a podium here, so we'll just ask you to stand up and state your name if you're a resident of North Ogden.
Sandy Cochran, I am a resident of North Ogden. I just want to say I completely disagree with your decision to not allow comments on the North Ogden Facebook page.
Thank you, Sandy. Appreciate that.
My name is Deanne Burns. I am a tax-paying citizen of North Ogden. And I just wanted to convey to you my experience a couple weeks ago. I called into the office and reported an ordinance violation. And it was less than impressive. And the employee argued the fact that there was, if it was an ordinance or not. And I said, that's fine. She says, I don't even know if this is an ordinance. I told her that was fine. And it was, I told her, I know it is an ordinance because I've lived here for 35 years. I know what the ordinances are. And she was not respectful. And those were my feelings, that I felt like I was being disrespected. So I hung up and looked up the code and called her back and told her what the code was. and said, here, it is an ordinance. So it was resolved. But I just want you to know that that's how I felt as a citizen. And I don't expect to ever go to the hospital and tell the doctor, you know, I need this surgery, and have him say, well, do you know what I need to do on the surgery? I mean, if you go to some employment, you expect them to be knowledgeable. And I just wanted to say, you better, North Ogden, and I appreciate it. So I appreciate that the ordinance was taken care of, and I do know the ordinances, and I do follow things around the community, and I want our community to be beautified. So, thank you.
Thank you, Deanne.
Thanks.
Now, is there anyone online that would like to comment?
Sorry. No raised hands right now.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else here? Like to comment at this point in time? Okay, we'll move on then to item number 5 on our agenda. I believe this will be led by Mr. Call, who has been diligently, along with his other duties, as our finance director, which is distracted from his chairmanship of the Tree Foundation, but other than that, he's done a nice job, and we're grateful that Peter now is starting full-time tomorrow, I believe.
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
Yeah.
So that will relieve the burden, but we want to acknowledge the fact that Dave and John and many others have been kind of filling in on Jamie's responsibilities. So thank you very much on that. So with that, we'll move on, but I think before, since we'll be discussing budget items, we'll hear from Mr. Phil Swanson with a report on the Citizen Budget Committee work, so that you can consider that in your discussion. Mr. Swanson?
Thank you, Mayor.
Mind if I just sit here for just a moment?
Yep.
Awesome, thank you.
Do mind or?
What's that?
I don't know. Whatever you want to take from it. You're welcome to sit down.
Thank you, Council, Mayor. Citizen Budget Committee met a couple of weeks ago, and we're discussing essentially what you'll be discussing today. And here's what came of that meeting. First, you'll say, does everybody have their coffee? Everybody's got one? Great. A question was raised in the committee about base versus usage fees. What, in the water department, what does each cover? What is covered by the base fee? What is covered by the usage fee? There was a suggestion that that could be a little bit more clear for those that want to understand. One of the big items that you'll be talking about today is the transportation utility fee. We encourage the discussion of the advantages or disadvantages of it being a fee, or that you raise the funds by increasing property tax by a certain amount. As a separate fee, as was discussed in our citizen budget meeting, there is a risk of legal action from Libertas and some other groups out there that are looking for municipalities to institute these fees and take them to the court, saying, despite what the courts have already ruled, that these are actual taxes, they're not actual fees. And so by instituting a fee, there's the risk. I don't know how big that risk is. I really couldn't make that determination. But there is an exposure there by increasing property tax by whatever percentage would need to be raised to gain the same amount of funds as you would do under a transportation utility fee. Then you lose that risk of being sued by Libertas or any other groups. However, it also makes it easier for those funds to be lost down the road by future councils. Anyone that's involved with the budget, where it's all property tax, if you'll remember when we did away with the transportation utility fee, when that first court case came out, and as we were waiting for that to be settled, it didn't actually go away. It got rolled into property tax. So what's happened since that time, and we talked about this a little bit in our budget meeting, that's just gone into general funds. That extra few percentage points that was the transportation utility fee hasn't been earmarked or set aside specifically for roads. Some of it, I'm sure, has been used for roads, but it's gone to many things because it just rolled into that general property tax designation. So it's worth a robust conversation and for council to come to some kind of a policy understanding of, if it's a property tax, how are those funds going to be earmarked and ensured that they are used for their intended purpose and the purpose that will be given to residents for raising their property taxes. And if it's a fee, then it's a little bit easier to track. But that's a conversation the council needs to have.
Joe?
Yes, sir.
I think maybe the other thing that was mentioned, John said it'd be about $15,000 to $20,000 to do a study to
To do a
justify the
study.
utility fee.
That's correct.
And basically what happened is, when we thought that was going to be declared a tax, actually the council passed an ordinance attributing all property tax to
Public safety. That's right.
I believe there is a way you can set up a restricted fund, a general fund that can only be used for the roads, but those are I think the issues that were discussed is the potential legal ramifications and the cost of the study. The other thing is, for anybody that itemizes on their tax return, a fee is not deductible, a tax is deductible. So just for informational purposes, I think those are some of the discussions that I remember from.
Right.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mayor. Lastly, there on the transportation utility fee, whatever council decides, we would implore you to be excruciatingly clear and upfront with the citizens, the reasons why a fee, a tax, whatever it is that you decide to do, that you are very upfront and very clear with the residents why it needs to happen and how much it's going to be, so that everyone that takes the opportunity to review the information will have a good understanding of the decisions that you've made. Yes, Mayor.
I think Mr. Bartholomew, who serves on the committee, wanted to disclose, and since he's not here, he asked me to. The best estimate we have is $110 million of road repairs and refurbishing that need to be done in the
Right.
city over the next, I think, was it 10 years? Something like that. So the city's facing $110 million bill to get its roads in what's classified, I guess, as reasonable, not extravagant, but reasonable.
Right.
So he asked me to disclose that it was
Yeah.
$110 million.
If you look at this bullet point here, the committee recommended that you're clear and transparent with the citizens about where we are and the costs to catch up. So that means, in my mind, and as Brian, I think, expressed best in that committee meeting, letting the residents know that we're $100 million, $110 million in road work staring us right now without any further degradation of the roads. And they need to know that. We as citizens need to know that and understand that. There will be questions that come with that. But I think knowing upfront is the best policy. You can skip the next one, the comparison. I've been talking with John on that, and I think there was some poor understanding in the brief time that we had to look at those figures. So we'll be back to you on that one later on. Salary policy and discussion, decision regarding the current city council and city policy of 50th percentile of market pay. That needs to have, again, a robust conversation to make sure that that is where you want to be, and understanding the financial costs of either increasing that, decreasing it, or keeping it the same. But making sure that the financial, impacts to the city and to the residents are understood there. benefits are always something that needs to be looked at and monitored on a comparative basis. Are we benefit rich? Are we benefit poor? Are we benefit neutral? All of that is important as we go through and in weighing the costs of benefits versus keeping the very good employees that we have versus the cost of keeping those very good employees that we have. It was suggested, not suggested, it was asked, why don't we charge a transient room tax? That may be an avenue of revenue that the city can charge. It would only apply to the VRBOs, the short-term rentals that we have a growing number of here in the city. We don't have a lot, so probably would not be a huge revenue, but we need all the revenue that we possibly can. And that is one area that other communities are using to access additional revenues for the city. And then finally, a thorough investigation of all available taxes and fees that could properly be charged ought to be discussed. Doesn't mean that we would necessarily implement them, but every revenue stream possibility needs to be investigated, whether that's through a couple of council members and a staff member going through that and investigating what's possible. But that was also mentioned as a need as we move forward into this budget session. And then just, hopefully you're watching the news and you see the economists talking about, people are pulling back on purchases. Our last month's sales tax was down. We'll see what this next month's sales tax does. We're in some interesting times financially as a community and also as a city. So any questions I can answer for you? Okay. John, you have a question? Okay.
No,
Well, you just gave me the eye, so I just wanted to make sure. Okay, thank you.
okay, we're actually gonna start off with Bowen talking about the streets and kind of taking the right along with what we call it together and provide some of those numbers. So let me just make sure I share the screen so folks online can see what we're talking about. So it didn't move. I just clicked down, I guess, huh? So we're, yeah, you go, Dylan, or Bowen.
This is basically an overview of our entire street system throughout the city. The current system RSL, so remaining service life, it's a scale of 0 to 20. 20 is a 20-year life expectancy. That's the best you can get. 0 obviously is 0 life expectancy again that needs to be constructed. So on the left, you'll see the chart there that shows kind of the RSLs that we currently have in the city. If you'll notice, we have quite a few roads in the category 6 RSL. And if you go on the right there, so those are where. On the right, it just shows the RSL 0 to 20, the length of the roads and the percentage of the roads that are in that current RSL.
And to give you guys some perspective, we talked about this on the trip a little bit, but on that first slide a little bit, John, it's just, you can see that we have a massive amount of between that 4 and 8 range, right? 4 years of life to 8 years of life. We also talked about on the trip how that is that spot where we can still chip it, save it with chip seal. Again, it's the most cost-effective product that we can put down that can buy us, up to 10 years of life to put back on that. And so when we go into the next slide, you'll actually see that we talk about how we're going to try to put some focus, a big full focus on that 4 to 8 year range, where we want to put about 50% of our money into that 4 to 8 to try to save those from getting to the point of no return where we'll have to do a, big overlay and those kind of things. my train of thought a little bit, but yeah. So we want to put about 50% of our money into there, about 25 into the rebuilds that we need to do, and then about 25% on everything, 8 and above, so that we can put that warranty product down that we talked about, where we have a 5-year warranty and we can salvage the really good roads and make sure that they stay really good too.
So Dave, if I read that first slide right, 67% of our roads have a 6-year or less remaining life.
Correct.
Now, how much of that would be rebuild versus
So,
fixing?
um,
Can we save any of those?
yeah, so from that 4 to 8, you can save those. It's when you get under that 4 years of life, that's when we're going to have to start really looking at the total rebuild, where we're having to completely take the asphalt out, put brand new asphalt down from curb to curb, and that's where it gets very costly.
So would it be safe to say that we really need to concentrate on that 0 to 6? So we don't, the 6-year, did you say we might be able to save that?
Yeah, so the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, that's the ones that we really want to save, and I think that's where we want to put most of our focus, because once they get below that 4-year line, like, that's when we're gonna start losing a bunch of roads, right? So, when they've already got to the 2s and 3s, we kind of lost them, so we really want to put our focus on that 4 to 8 range, so that we can get those to look like 15-year roads. We can save them with the least amount of money. And so, like I said, that's where we really try to put our focus on. It's about 50% of our money between 4 and 8. And then 25 below 4%, or below the 4, and all the rest of it above the.
If I heard you correctly, the 4, 2, and the 0 could be subject to total rebuild.
Yes,
That's what you said is about $90 a linear foot.
yeah.
That's $20 million just right there.
Yeah.
Between 0 and 4 years.
Yeah.
But if we don't come up with let alone looking at the others to try to save them or rebuild.
Correct. Yes, so there's some, under 8 years, we've got a lot, like you said, you've got 70% of your roads under 8 years for life. So.
What's a number on the left of that second slide right there? What's the 400 and those numbers represent?
It's yeah. I want to say
The area of the roads. And that's the general, like, an overview of the city. You can see by color which roads fit into which audit category. Again, heavy, 4, 2 to 8, through there in the entire city.
and the 0 are roads that because they use Google Map to map out their route, and the 0 they didn't go to because, as you can see, some of them are trails. One's Washington Boulevard, and so they're ones that weren't included because we're not responsible for maintaining them. But this is the treatment map.
Correct, yeah, so this is, another overview of the entire city based off of the recommended treatment that you'll see on the right there. You can see a lot of red, which is a lot of chip seal. The cost of chip seal, based off all the recommended treatments is $90 million alone. So a lot of the roads, again, like Dave mentioned, can be saved, if we begin to, start chipping away at those roads. And trying to get as far as we can with that.
And the sections we drove that were rebuilds in our tour.
Winfield Drive, which is like that little section right there, yeah. Over by the pit is another perfect example, anything, when you go right outside the pit, that's total reason.
Yeah.
Dave, I have a question. I think I heard one time that street department has mapped this out, roads life on the upside 20, we tried to not let a road go past 25 years,
Yeah.
is what I think I remember hearing. Correct. So how do we get to this point where we have so much congregated in that 8 number of years? Have we not been able to fund that, or what's happened?
So there's two parts of that. I think, you know, that we have got behind because we didn't have the funds. And then the other part is, I'll tell you, is the cost of asphalt and road repairs has just skyrocketed from about 2018 to now. I mean, the way it skyrocketed is just
Doubled.
even more than that. I mean, we've seen in some cases, like when total rebuild, we're talking like 4 times as much as what was back in 2018.
So my point is, whether you want to believe it or not, is the longer you defer this, the more it costs you.
Absolutely.
Even though it's a big number, it just gets bigger if you don't fund it.
Correct. Correct. I mean, because when we,
And asphalt's not going down in price, probably.
absolutely. And so the last time that we actually had iWorks come out and they did this, it was in 2015, 16. And that, their big number was like 40 million. So I mean, you've seen that it's grown from 40 million to 110, even though we've been doing all this work that we've been doing, we're not catching up. Like, we're actually falling behind every year. And so that's why we wanted to implement this tough, and put some real focus onto where all of our money is going back into the roads.
And so can you say that the state funding amount that we get hasn't changed over the years?
So that number, it gets adjusted by the state. So I mean, the Class C has, you know, grown with us. We just recently put in, an application to show that, hey, we've got more road mileage, so we get more, but so is everybody else, right? Everybody else has, and so our share of the pot hasn't changed very much.
So that $90 million is,
Just all that red, basically.
but that's pretty much what the city has to come up with, or is there a complementary coming from the state with the B and C?
So,
To
yeah,
offset that?
so yeah, we get money for B&C road funds. It's about 900,000 a year.
Yeah.
So basically, we're not really touching a lot. 900,000 a year, huh?
So in 100 years, we'll get $90 million from the state.
Yeah, so basically what we're saying is $10 million a year to,
That's some good math.
And so this slide is if everything was done tomorrow and we're not gonna bond for it, but if we just went out and won the lottery, we would spend $115 million and we'd get every road up to pretty close to 20 years.
But that's assuming today's prices only, right?
Correct.
And no one drives on the roads until you fix it.
Yeah.
Well, and you'll know on a lot of the roads we drove, they don't get a lot of traffic. And so just UV, time, hot, cold, just breaks down a road. So.
And that's kind of what I talked about a little earlier, where we want to put a lot of that focus where that red area was. About 50% of our money, we'd really like to focus on that red area. And then 25 on the rebuilds and 25 on the good roads that we want to keep good, by putting some of those treatments down like that 5-year warranty.
And this is a good reflection of, you know, when you get the roads in the 8 to 15 RSL range, as you can see, they are cheaper to maintain from that point when you're not trying to play catch up.
But yeah, everything under that, you can see how it starts to make it.
And this is saying that there's 10% of the cost, $12 million is in that 8 to 15 range. That's not 10% of our roads. And so if you look all the way back up at those 10, or those 8 to 15, you know, there's 25-ish% of our roads we can maintain with $12 million, as opposed to the other chunk that the mayor mentioned, the 60 some odd percent, or it's, you know, that is 100 million. And so to Dave and Bowen's point, it is way more expensive to do it in the 06 with the full rebuilds than it is to just do those sill coats. Those sill coats go down quick and easy, and we can do a lot at a time. So where this discussion leads to, council, is obviously, I think everyone probably agrees there's an issue that needs to be addressed. And so the question is probably, or is really, how do you want to address it? Do we want to start talking about doing a transportation utility fee, or do we want to talk about doing it from a property tax perspective? And I think to the mayor's point, which was a good one, is if we're going to do it property tax, we need to make sure that money is set aside for roads. I mean, and so with the transportation utility fee, the state code makes us keep it separate and use it only for roads, but with property tax, it can get blended and mixed. However, it's, if you're generating enough money a year, it would be really easy to leave it for roads, because that probably on the foreseeable future is the biggest need. As far as growth in parks, the majority of that's going to come from park impact fees, which is helpful. Maintenance of parks, playgrounds and stuff, we're caught up. We've been able to catch up from the kicking it down the road a lot with your guidance and help over the past several years. And so really, the biggest capital needs in the general fund are roads. This building, for example, is now currently the oldest general fund building in the city, and it was built in 1992, 3, something like that, but it has 30 years of useful life. So there's still another 30 years this building can be used. So roads is like number one.
Now, maybe to put it in perspective, if council members may be new, the transportation utility used to be $3 a month. We have about 6,800 residents. That generated $244,000 a year at $3. So you can see that doesn't, I mean, it's a good start, don't get me wrong. 3 is better than 0. But when you're looking at that type of bill, you're talking a substantial amount. I mean, if we've got 6,800, or just let's round to 7,000. What, $10 a month would give you $1 million a year?
Right about, yeah.
Which would just end up costing you more down the road, right? Because you can't do hardly anything. We have basically 2 million, right? Because you got road funds.
Yeah.
But I mean, we can see the magnitude of the problem.
So what is the true number? I mean, there's no way we're getting $100 million next year. So I guess the question is, what's the bite of the elephant that we need to for this year or next year or whatever?
So, I mean, the recommendation from the get-go was that we would do at least $10. I think we talked about that
Right.
last year. So, the number the staff threw around was $60 a month, which seemed way too much and not feasible. And so I think that $10 to $15 is probably the biggest bite that people can swallow
But
right
is
now.
it even anything to,
It's better than 0.
true, but is it gonna,
$2 million project every year, like,
but if you have 20% the 4-year roads, you're not gonna get them. You're gonna be, I mean, even if you concentrated on the 1-4, because to me, that would be the ones that you'd hit first, you're not gonna make it with 2 million or, because you get past, really, if you put all your money on the 4, which is what would save everything, you're still not gonna make it, right?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is by the time you generate $30 million in money, you have another $30 million of work. And so there's a little bit of a conversation about a level of expectation for the residents that, you know, where the main roads are probably going to be a major focus, and then the side roads will be hit as we can.
Because, I mean, the key thing is prices aren't going down ever. So I guess the question is either you take a bite or you take all of it. Really, those are the two, in my mind, if you're not gonna, because once it gets below 4, you're talking, what'd you say, with the double or triple? To save, to rebuild versus save. I mean, so instead of 100 million, you're talking whatever, because all those other roads start hitting that, right? So you're
Yeah.
talking, I mean,
So-
I'm not talking 300 million, but you're still talking a ginormous number. That's not what you're seeing there.
If we could spend $90 million next year, we could crack seal everything in that kind of, I call it the 4+, because there's a few of those 4s that need to be rebuilt and there's a few that can be saved. But $90 million is, I mean, what is that? $900 a month from every house, and that's not going to work. It's part of the reason why the HOA legacy came to the council at the meeting last time and said, hey, we want you to take it over, is because they just got this bill. Their road is probably a 6-year road, maybe a 4-year road.
So is it even an option to talk about bonding at this point or not?
It is an option. Interest rates are high. For this high of a number, you'd have to do it as a general obligation bond, which means it would be put against property tax and it'd be voted on by the residents.
Because I mean, you're, in my mind, if you're doing $2 million increments, you're not gonna get there forever. And they're gonna be chewing on it anyways. Even if you do a fee versus a tax, it's still the same thing. It's still kind of coming out of somebody's pocket. So it either comes out now or it comes out in 10 years, but in 10 years, it's gonna be triple the cost. Right? Am I
Mhm.
getting that?
Yeah.
So I don't know why we should be talking about the 90, not just 2. The more I hear about this, it's because you're gonna be, the city, it's like waiting to buy a house as you see it going up. Instead of buying, saving money for a house instead of taking a loan. The costs are just still gonna go up, and if they triple, you're never gonna get there. Sorry.
I'm curious to know, if we did the $10 a month, then, we would never catch up, but are the roads gonna deteriorate quicker than we're getting money put into the pot, right?
Yeah, that's, yeah.
But I'm also curious if we did win the lottery and do the 115 million tomorrow, that would be every single road is in a perfect state. And again, back to what John said, what's the level of expectation and, standard of living that.
So ballpark numbers as I guess I'm not the finance director anymore, but as if you did a bond, you're typically gonna pay $1.40 to $1.50 so the 90 would turn into 140. If you divide that by the 20 years and divide that by the 72 homes, it'd be about $1,000 a year to a bond payment for every home.
For 20 years.
For 20 years. But to your point, it would be more expensive than $140 million to wait and do it in 10 years. But they're not easy numbers, but that doesn't mean that the conversation couldn't be had. Instead of bonding for 90, you bond for 20, or you know what I mean? I should have included that. It's a good point to bring up, but that's part of the conversation. It could be, if we were going to do a go bond, it would need to be next year. That'd be the very first we could do it. So, for example, the council could adopt a fee or a tax for this year with a plan to do a go bond conversation for next year.
Do we know of any cities that have a good plan in place, that have demonstrated that they are super ahead of the game and or not? Because I feel like this is similar situation to other cities around us. I think traveling around most cities around here, their roads seem similar state or sometimes worse. Do we have any good examples that we can point to in the area?
I would say the county probably has the best roads. And just because their roads don't have curb gutter sidewalk and most of their roads, as you know, have those burrow pits. So watershed's easy. I mean, Eric's in the room. Would you say that might be the best example close around in the county?
Yeah, there's also less road and less traffic. So large trucks, being on a hillside doesn't help it very much. We also have a colder climate. And so that can deteriorate the roads quite a bit.
But they chip seal their roads probably consistently every 10 years.
Yeah, and that's one thing, right? What's the level of service that North Ogden expects? Right? I mean, if you're asking for, the 10 to 15, right? That's what a chip seal will get you up to a 10 to 16 RSL, right?
I mean,
So-
on our ride, I mean, we showed you a couple of those 10, right? And I mean, I'll ask you guys, what were your guys' thoughts? Like, were they drivable? Did you feel like they were okay? Like, and so it does, the level of service is a big part of this conversation is, are you okay with that feeling on the road, that 10 compared to the 20? Like, I mean, where do we want to land and what are we okay with? I mean,
Cause this is like Armageddon, right? We've given like this is like, this is the worst, but it depends on what you expect. Right?
I think even if we're putting a plan in place now versus doing nothing, we've accomplished something. So, we just gotta figure out potentially what that number is per year that we're shooting for and figure out how to make that revenue. Not saying that a bond would be off the table or anything. That's something we can talk about. But I just feel like we're at in the 4 years that I've been on the council, we haven't had a comprehensive look at the roads like this. We've had kind of bits and pieces of discussions about it, but this is the first time I'm seeing everything, and it is awesome to see, scary to see, but awesome to see. And so I'm kind of just trying to muddle in my mind that we start making a goal of what that number is per year, and maybe that number has to be slightly more aggressive towards the beginning because we're trying to save some of the roads, and then it starts to taper off after 5 to 10 years or something. I don't know. It would be very easy. It wouldn't be fun to explain, but it would be easy to explain to residents that we have a need. And we have some pretty good data and numbers to back it up. So anyways, that's where I'm kind of thinking right now.
What's the escalation to that number each year that we don't do anything? Is it 5%, 10%? Is it? I mean,
Yeah.
zero, it stays at zero. Because if we don't do anything this year, then it's 100 million next year. And it's 120 million next year. I mean, it just escalates. There's no, right? Even if you take 2 million out, it's still gonna be 10 more million because the escalation cost of the material, et cetera.
Because of the sharp rise in asphalt the last 5 years, I couldn't guess what it would be in 5 years from now. But the 10 prior years to that, it didn't move very much. We were doing about the same, or same amount square footage wise and those kind of things, and it was pretty stagnant. So it's like, I couldn't even begin to guess.
You've got a good point, because with the Olympics coming, right, state's gonna wanna have all the roads in nice condition. So the demand for asphalt and road work is not gonna go down.
Yeah.
It's probably gonna continue to accelerate.
What's the science behind the 0 years left and the 10 years left? Is it pretty precise? Is it kind of a guess? Like a zero road, we saw some of those on the tour, but I mean, it could technically last a couple more years, 3 more years, 4 more years. What's the science like on it?
Correct. I mean, at the end of the day, they are professionals, and so that's what they do. But at the end of the day, there is a human element to it, right? And that they're guessing as much as you know, like, okay, well, we're gonna be on this road and it's showing all these signs. And because of this slope and different things, you know, they are putting some human aspect to that. So you're right. I mean, for instance, the King Hill Drive one, I would absolutely think that we need to probably put some focus on that because of the slope, because of the big trucks, because of like certain things. But we might be able to take another 2-year one somewhere else, you know, either down in the flats or some other places, and maybe we can buy ourselves, you know, a couple more years, with testing and other things. So there is a human element, but, you know, there is a professional element, obviously.
Right.
John and myself had a discussion with an individual that wants to do something that would drastically increase traffic on 2600 and Mountain Road. And so I can tell you my response was, our roads won't handle any more traffic of that nature. And so why should we do something of that nature when all it's gonna do is cost the city more money? Now, economically, I don't know, maybe they're willing to widen the road or repave the road to get access to what they want to do. The gondola. Haven't gone away. Right, John? The gondola.
Yeah, yeah, that's what Dave was saying, the John Dola. So, you know, council, I think the bonding is a conversation that I think this council needs to have moving into next year. For these coming 12 months, I think to your point, Councilmember Holver, that we need to pick a number we're shooting for of road to do and see if there's a way to fund it. Right now, if I was gonna pick my dream number, and it's not that big a dream, but I would shoot to raise $3 million and just attack what we can. That would almost be 3 times as much, almost 4 times as much as we've ever done in the past in a single year. But that would come at the cost of either a 66% property tax increase on top of the 4% that's already in the budget, or $20 a month. So those are the kind of numbers we're talking about. And in theory, you don't have to decide tonight. You know, I just saying that we can't spend an hour on each one of these bullet points tonight.
John, can we go back, because 3 million would let us do about 33,000 linear feet of the zero to the roads that have to be redone now, right? That are long.
Yeah, right around there.
So if you go back, because I think you said it's about 90 bucks a linear foot. So, your 3
One more
million, go
slide.
back to that first slide if you would.
Right there.
That would allow you to do the roads of 0 and part of the roads that are at 2.
No. Cause that would be,
You've got the
that'd be more money for rebuild, right?
90 bucks.
That was the rebuild number?
That was the reason.
Okay.
Well, and the recommendation from staff is to, I'm gonna call it the 6-year mark, is to spend 50%, so $1.5 million on chip sealing 6-year roads so they don't fall into rebuild roads. And then spend 25%, 750 on those rebuild roads like King Hill. And then spend 750 on roads that are 8+ to keep them from falling into a chip seal. Because, and I'm gonna throw a number out of the, but say $5 million. Remember that 10% that was the 8+ was $2 million. If you spent $5 million on those roads, and that would push those that are 8, 9s, and 10s into 18-year roads, and it gives us 10 more years. And so that's the recommendation from Bowen and Dave and Eric is to 50% on chip seals, 25% on rebuilds, and 25% on decent roads and keeping them decent so we don't fall behind there.
You're basically dollar cost averaging.
You know, but
Price point was at 3 million?
well, but so that was the numbers I was using, and I'm using 3 million as the number, and to the mayor's point, $3 million. If we're trying to avoid the catastrophic road failures, will not get us there. And we will have roads that look like, they probably don't. Well, I'm trying to think of a city that I can pick on that isn't ever gonna listen to us. There are roads in Salt Lake you have driven that are not UDOT roads. You know, that there are potholes that will swallow your wheel. And we will have some of those in the city and they'll get filled with dirt and stuff to keep it going, but I'm just thinking that I think asking the residents for that $20 a month for roads might be the max politically that you can. Understanding
I'm
that,
gonna say something here, and maybe I can say it because I'm not running again. We should not be making decisions on what's politically right. That's what gets us in trouble. We need to make decisions on what the need is. That sounds a little bit harsh, but it's the fact of the matter. If you're making a decision on whether you're gonna get reelected again if you run, you shouldn't run. Because it's not the right thing to do. And that, John, 3 million is, sorry, John.
no, that's fine.
That's the fact of the matter. That's what gets things in trouble. It's basically kicking it down the road because you're more worried about your political career and what's best for the city.
I think when he, well,
And it's like 36, to get 3 million bucks on 7,000 homes, it's about 36 bucks a month.
well, you gotta, 3 million included what the state was getting too.
Yeah, it includes the state number. But yeah, the mayor's right.
Yeah, but 3 million is not gonna do anything.
Right.
That's the problem you got.
But it's gonna do more than nothing.
Yeah, but that's
Yeah.
not,
I know,
that's
it's
not,
frustrating.
in this situation, more than nothing is really not more than nothing because it costs you more to not do it, right?
But if we can't do a bond this year, that would be the solution. Right, so I mean, I guess then we do nothing and wait till next year.
No.
Yeah, I was being sarcastic.
I know.
Well, and what's the chance, I know Phil knows this, what's the passing rate of a general obligation bond?
Here in North Ogden?
It's
And
zero in North Ogden, but generally it's less than 30%, isn't it?
yep.
Yeah.
Get a bond now, people.
And you're not getting anything, you're not getting anything fun out of it,
No, not-
you know, but the,
well, I was at Intermountain Farmers, I think I was telling John this or Phil the other day. I'm down getting some things from my garden, and I get hammered by this lady about how bad our roads are and how we don't enforce speeding. And if you look back, the number of comments you get about the conditions of our road, why isn't this pothole filled, why isn't that taken care of? Maybe there's a chance you can get a general obligation bond passed. Because people complain a lot about the roads, and then you redo a road, like Ruland Drive, and they complain because we turned it into a raceway, because it's too smooth. So I don't know, but, you know, it's, in
I
this
feel
case,
like
I'm gonna say more than zero, it's probably really not, because it actually puts you further in the hole.
I'm just wondering what residents are going to, because just to me, it feels that we have the data, we have the numbers, but it feels out of nowhere. Like all of a sudden, this is the first we're ever talking about it, you know? I know we've talked about it in bits and pieces over the last few years, but
Saved anything.
yeah, well, that's what I'm worried about is that it's like, everyone will be like, well, what have you been doing? You know?
How much did we spend this year on roads?
Almost 2 million.
I know we're
So we
spent-
have been,
So
but
we
it's just been out of our
But
general.
we've got still
Yeah.
$900,000 sitting in that, last I saw. Still have $900,000 sitting in
So
that.
what's 3 million minus 900 minus another 900 that we're gonna get from the state?
1.2.
So then that's more like the 10 to 15, is
But
that,
it doesn't do anything for you. I mean, it does very little for you,
we'd still get the 3 million.
but 3 million doesn't.
But we've decided that 3 million is not going to do much.
Well, we.
It's more than zero.
Oh, yeah, okay, sorry, yeah, not talking for
Yeah.
Mr. Pulver.
And then there also is, and I'm talking about the bond thing, but the chance of the city being able to accomplish $50 million of road work in a year is also small, minimum, right? Like there's not we would take every single paver in the county for all the summer long, and so but I think that what the group is kind of circling around is we need kind of what's our 9-month plan while we discuss the bond option, because that's the only way we're going to get anything critical unless the council is willing to do something drastic. I mean, Harrisville passed they threw out 150%, 166
John,
property
is there
tax
any
increase.
assistance? I know that Harrisville got some money for roads. There might have been a new road though. But is there anything available in grants or help from other sources, the state or?
WACOG has money for, new infrastructure to help with issues. And we have one approved for acquisition on Mountain Road and funding approved for Washington as you get up, as you go through the S
And we
curve.
Put in another one.
And we just put in for the Fruitland and 2100 roundabout and what was the other one?
Well, so then we did 2100 to finish that grant funding. And then there was a study and then the refuge island for 1900 North.
Yeah.
And Christina, just so you're aware too, that transportation utility money that's out there now, it'd be a one-time deal. They use that.
Yeah, we spend it and it'd be gone.
But if you had 3 million and 2 million, 5 million, you may be able to put a dent. And I don't know if the city can handle can they handle that 5 million?
I think we can put a $5 million.
Which would be the 3 million plus the,
But, and especially if we bid it out, if the budget was adopted in, August after truth and taxation, if that was the process, then we would put it out to bid probably immediately so we could get on the schedule for next year and be, one of those companies' number one priority.
And then the way that we try to do this, where the 50%, 25 and 25, those are typically kind of like 3 different kind of companies that would do, like, so we'd be able to put that out as a bid, a full bid. They would probably bid on different schedules, so I definitely think you could do a $5 million contract.
so what's the chip seal cost? The 3 bills 90, what's the chip seal?
The box chips in,
Go ahead.
$5 square run.
45?
Total linear foot would be. what-
Yeah, so we were doing 23 cents a square foot. It's a little easier math
For the seal coat?
for the silk coat.
Seal coat, yes.
Yeah, and then there was a little bit of chip, and then the chip was what, it was like $20. So anyway, that's how we got the number. Do you have your,
Yeah, I'm just looking for the
Breakdown.
8 and the 6 year. If that's what we wanna save, how much can we do? That's it. I guess, I'm just saying, if we think doing the 8 and the 6 year will save us money, how much is that?
So a chip seal project, where we don't have to do any engineering or overlay, it'd be $45.20 a square yard.
That's where you are.
Square yard.
Linear foot, you're at.
so you're around $5, it's so divided by 9, right? So you're at $5 a square foot.
So, but now go back, John, the 6 and 8 year. So we got 315,000 square feet. Am I looking at that right? 229,000 and 84,000 that we do chip seal on?
That's linear feet.
Yeah, that's,
And then there's a million square yards. So it'd be 45 million to do Olive Road of the 6 in chip seal.
Which would take them from 6 to a 10.
Or do a 15.
Get the 8 and 6 not to fall down there.
Yeah, you get about 10 a year.
That was, yeah, Mayor, that's my point, yeah.
Yeah, so we got 1.4 million.
Yep.
What did you say? 45 cents?
For the seal coat, is at 23 cents is what we were getting for just the seal coat, no chip.
Which
So those are like,
that's
Is that what we have to do in 6 and 8? I'm just trying to get, what's it gonna cost to do 6 and 8?
that would be chip.
those are gonna be the chips.
Yeah, that'd be a chip.
And that's how much?
Which is $5.
$45.
Square yard.
Square yard.
$5 a square foot.
Mhm.
But I think Dave made a good point. What can we realistically do for what kind of contracts? We say we need 40 million, but if we don't, we can realistically only do 3 to 5 million. We gotta start there.
But you gotta start at 6, right? Because you don't want it to fall into 4.
Well, right, but if we can't get a contractor to do it, then it doesn't matter if we have the money ahead or not. So what can we realistically
And you
get done?
Build that into more than the 115 million then. right? If you
Mhm.
can't do it,
Well, yeah, but
and I'd imagine you could find, city might not be able to do it, but I'm sure you can find contractors to do it.
No, we can get a contractor, but I don't.
To do it in 1 year is what the issue is, right?
how much could we get a contractor to do? Because then we're also closing down roads at the same time and you're diverting traffic for, I mean,
Well,
it becomes a logistical
like Mr.
nightmare.
Trump says,
Yeah.
you know, you're gonna have to live with some, inconvenience or pay more money.
Yep.
That's your choice. Inconvenience or more money. So if you take the 6 year and say half of that, you got what, 115,000 linear feet? Because I understand, right? We're trying to save it from falling into the 4, right? That's the most immediate need then.
But you can't do it. I mean, you could, if you raise your taxes by 6,000%, but.
It's now or later, right?
Correct.
I mean, nobody likes taxes. I don't like taxes. But it's now or later.
I guess my only issue is when you increase property taxes, you're never gonna
Come back down.
come back down. Just my,
But unless it's a go bond, cause
Correct.
then it
Pays off.
it ends and the
Right.
go bond goes away.
But you're never gonna do away with your transportation utility fee either, because you've got to generate that to keep things. I mean, neither one of them are going away.
not disagreeing with you, but it's more evident as to where it is on what.
And you can put it wherever you want.
Yeah.
Like I've always said, doesn't matter if you call it a fee or a tax, it still comes out of the same wallet.
Where's the amortization on it go? How can you run that?
2025.
It's 20 years.
20 years?
We haven't talked about oh, sorry. We haven't talked much about the difference between going the fee route or property tax route. I originally thought I was for the fees until I listened to the budget subcommittee. And I didn't realize that there was still potential litigation if you go the route of doing the utility fees. So do we have any,
There's still a risk.
Even if you.
but the study potentially helps that?
Mhm.
Yeah. So I just wanted to get a read of the room of what everyone thought, because I originally thought the idea of doing just a straight fee, just that goes straight to roads, that was enticing to me because it just seemed pretty simple and straightforward. But I did start to worry about, exposing the city to any litigation. What's everyone's thoughts on that?
My curiosity would be, so what's the likelihood of actually getting
Yeah,
sued?
yeah.
So this is my opinion, they're looking for the low hanging fruit. So it will likely be a small city, who hasn't hired an engineering firm to do the study. So an engineering firm will cost 60 grand to do the study. We would use a financial group to help us with our data. And the total cost we would spend would be close to it, but we could likely be it. That's the reality. Although what we'd probably do is our study would come back and say, oh, you should charge residents $60 to $100 a month. And then you would charge something less than that, and then it makes it harder to sue. But we would be on the radar because we're ready to go and they're looking for somebody.
How many cities already have their fees?
13,
Have they been sued?
Pleasant Grove was.
Oh, that was, okay,
Yeah.
Pleasant Grove, but nobody else has had, everybody else kind of waited to see what was gonna happen in Pleasant Grove.
I'll tell you my perspective on it. I don't know if we're taking turns here or not, but I feel like, in my perspective, I could be wrong, in my perspective, majority of citizens who live here don't come to city council, don't read what we put out, don't listen to city council members, what they announce or whatever you want to say, and they just are confused and upset of the increase. And they don't put the time into figuring out why necessarily, but, so they could, right? But, it would make it very clear and obvious what this is for and why it's new. And like was brought up before, I'm concerned that this hasn't been, a main talking point to the citizens in the past. And it seems like it hasn't been something that's been depreciated or accounted for, planned for. And all of a sudden now it's like this big Armageddon emergency and we need to spend, you know, charge residents a huge amount of dollars and spend 5 million all in 1 year. And, to me, that's catching people off guard and tricking people. And, you know, you gotta think about the people that $20 a month is gonna be really hard and what's realistic. And so if you have it be a fee and it's labeled a fee, and it's realistic, then maybe it goes over better. And I'm just speaking from a homeowner who sees my fees and is surprised over the years. That's just the perspective that I'm bringing.
Yeah, and I'd like to say, John has been talking about this transportation utility fund for years. And we have talked about, we were talking in the range of minimum 10 million. So I would take, exception to the fact that this hasn't been talked about.
I remember the $3 being charged and then Athene refunded that amount.
No, John has been talking about the council needing to make a decision on the transportation utility fee for at least 2 years.
I just mean to the citizens.
I concur. I think
Yeah,
the problem,
to the point, they haven't been involved. You're right.
yeah,
If they were involved and came to council meeting or looked at it, they know there has been some discussion. So
but I agree, it's like bam, you know, I understand that it might have been slow rolling for a while, but in all honesty, this is the first comprehensive thing that's been brought in front of me since I've been here. So there hasn't been anything like this since then. I mean, I think there was one little thing that we were talking about, one of the budget years, that we needed to increase for road stuff, but not this, hey, we need $110 million.
Yeah.
So
hasn't been done.
right, and so I guess my point is that, number one, you know, you slipstream in to get the residents' understanding about it, and then there's no way that we can do this without. If we do a $3 to $6 million a year, it's not gonna, we'll never stop. And I don't, you know, we're gonna be fixing or rebuilding roads for the next 20 years if we don't get a hold of it, and that's the problem, is that even with all of the money that we were getting, it starts slipping, and there's no way that when you have external pressure on certain funds or certain materials, there's no way that you can't get more from the state. You can't get blood from a stone. So I guess my point is that I've gone round and round. I wrote down, you know, $10 a month. That's not gonna cut it, you know, 26 maybe. And then you said 66% if we even close to doing a property tax thing, right?
That'd be $20 a month.
Yeah, that'd be 20. So I guess there, either way, you're kind of dooming yourself, but I think it has to be done. You have to pick one. And I think, you know, to me, yeah, you're gonna spend 20 grand or whatever to do the fee, but I agree that it's very specific. You know what it is. You do a property tax thing, people are gonna come with pitchforks and I don't understand this, and you're gonna present this, and they go, oh, I still don't understand it. You suck. But if you stick it in your, if you stick it, that's true, right? I said that a couple years ago. That in your fee, and this is what it's for, it's to fix roads, fix your potholes in front of your house. It's gonna be quicker. I know 20 people that'd be right off the bat. You're like, oh, okay. You know, so I think, I don't know. I don't say it's optics, but at the same time, we gotta do something.
We're gonna increase the utility 20%, at least, plus the 5. The average utility bill is maybe 90. So you're gonna increase that 30%. You don't think people are gonna say anything about their utility bill going up 30%?
Would it be labeled separately
They're
or
gonna
would
see
it
that
just
every
be?
month.
Yeah, it would show up as, you know, it says water, sewer, trash. It'll say, you know, transportation utility fee.
And we could put something on there that said new or explained it.
We could call it whatever we want on the bill. I think we're limited like how many characters, but yeah.
So we don't really have a chance to present it.
I mean, through a newsletter and information type of thing, but that's about
All you
it.
gotta do is show this.
But people won't feel like they had a say in it because it's just, this is what you're doing. This is what we've done. So, you know,
But
there's,
technically,
That's not truth in taxation.
I don't know.
yeah,
So
I see both sides, and I don't, you know,
Hold the public hearing.
if we,
to do update the
to
fees.
do
Right.
schedule.
if we were to bond, you know, we'd have to have future generations of councils and mayors would be very lucky because we could get that up completely to speed. And then as long as people aren't not paying attention, they have a certain amount, probably not even that crazy amount of money put per year into a budget that always maintains the roads and you never get back to this. It'd be, I just don't know what the likelihood of a bond passing is but it
You know, in
seems,
North Ogden,
it seems,
that
it
much
seems,
Money, are you kidding? But
Yeah,
we're.
that's what I'm saying. I don't know what the likelihood is.
You could say this
I
or that.
think even the.
But
Thinking
it's a need versus a want, so, rec center versus roads, I don't know. Maybe it's more likely to pass because it's more of a necessity. Maybe it's less likely to pass because people aren't excited about it. I don't know. Cause you hear different perspectives all the time of what people want.
Well, it ends up only being, I did some calculations, so it only ends up being a special assessment of $16,176 per house. You know,
Per year.
and
No.
you break that down to $1,617 a year for every house, which breaks that down to $134 a month per house. For 10 years, we'd have $110 million.
I'm in favor of the tax, and that's because if you pay to do a fee, you're gonna have to do a study, which is what's up on the screen, but now we're gonna pay $20,000 to have an engineering firm do this. It's gonna take how long is it gonna take to get a study done?
I think Mark, the guy we talked to, would probably 6 to 8 weeks.
And then you start collecting it once a month for how many months before you have enough money to do anything? We put it on property taxes, we'll have our money from the first year in November, December. And we could have that 5 million, we could go out to bond or bid, whatever, and for the spring and have the money to do a project. If you do a transportation utility fee, we may not get the first project done until another year and a half. But that's just the opinion of Ryan.
I have a couple of questions. Sorry, I didn't mean to change it.
I'm done.
Yeah. I would love to know the chances, what your thoughts are as the city attorney, the chances of us getting sued, and then I'd also like to know the 2 million that we put forth at the past year onto roads, wherever that money's coming from, is there going to be another 2 million next year, or would this take the place of it, and so we don't get the 2 million?
Either way, so the call it $1 million from the state will come. Like, that's part of the BNC money that's coming. The other money we've been talking about, if you do a tax or a fee, it would only not come if the council rescinded it. So it would,
No, I just mean, last year we spent 2 million on the roads from the general fund, right? So is that a plan for every year?
it was part of combining 2 years of funding together. So we saved some BNC road funds from the year before to make a bigger project to get a better price.
So we didn't actually pull any money from us, it was just 2 years.
Well, there was a little more general fund money, but it was a lot of BNC.
Yeah.
1.5 was BNC money, I think, something like that.
I do like the idea of, if there is truth in taxation, to have a just very straightforward. I know that we've always been, by ordinance to, public safety, but I like the idea of saying 5% of your total property tax bill is going towards roads, or however we have to do that. That makes it, and we have it in ordinance or whatever. So, and if it's in ordinance, then if a new council gets elected and has major heartburn with it, they're gonna have to go to the work of getting a new ordinance in place. Because if it's something that this council generally feels good about, it seems like it'd be a good thing, and the only way that it could, because I would be trying to prevent future councils from coming in and not completely understanding what they're doing and saying, I'm coming in to cut taxes for everyone and I'm gonna be your hero. And they just sweep it all under the rug again. So I do like the idea of having it just very clear at a truth and taxation that this is the percentage towards roads.
John, is there a way, we've got 3 citizens here tonight. Is there a way we can get some input from the citizens? Explaining the situation and then asking them, look, it's not if, but it's which one. Because unless they don't want to have roads to drive on, which I don't think they want, but is there a way we can get some feedback to help the council?
Yeah, we could use our flash vote.
mean, I don't know, council, would you like to?
Yeah.
Get some
And
feedback?
maybe we could explain the pros and cons on there.
Yeah, they'll, the nice thing about the flash vote service that we still have for another year, is that they will make it neutral.
Which
So,
inform the residents.
Yeah, they'll say, hey, this is the situation, here are the options. And, you know, they'll even include an option of, hey, we're fine with roads as is, you know, and then they'll ask their, you know, 5 or 6 questions that'll give a good feel on that. It'll probably take them a week and a half, 2 weeks to write it and 3 days to run it.
Could they put this on the flash vote to say this is our current state?
Mhm.
Cause that would be good.
Yeah, I think they can include graphics.
Would there be an inclusion of like question about a bond?
We could, yeah. Because we could say, how do you want to pay for it? Do you want a bond for it? Do you want a
And you could say,
monthly?
the disadvantages of bond are this, the advantages are, once it's paid off in 20 years, you don't have to pay it anymore. The advantage or the disadvantage of property taxes is you're permanently increasing whatever our rate is taken to, or I don't know how you say it, but it'd be kind of interesting to put it out there.
Yeah, I could, yeah, I can ask.
I don't
them
think
how they would
anyone's gonna
phrase
be
that.
excited about that flash vote, but I think they will hopefully respond to it.
Well, and because all of our flash votes have been in the recreation art or parks range. So you've got a good test group where they're this is not a question they're expecting. And so you'll get honest opinions from people who didn't sign up for the vote just for this topic. Although, as you know, they'll also provide a link that will allow people who are interested in this topic and want to jump in. And they'll give you both results mixed and separated, so you can see those who signed up just for this and those who were already signed up.
John, how much would you bond for?
Me personally,
I mean, what would you recommend the city bond for?
I wouldn't bond 50. That's actually the number I was gonna say. Because at a certain point, just for your ability to hold, I mean, if you do a go bond, they'll let you bond for whatever you can pass, because it just goes property tax and it's an obligation. But 50 would be the number would be the high end of the number I would shoot for.
Cause you gotta pay it off.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you look at that, you're commit yourself to a principal payment, because as you know, principal payments are equal to $2.5 million a year. And then the interest rate is probably at this point in time, close to 6%. That's another $3 million a year. You're talking about $5.5 million. And just to clarify, and I know this sounds terrible, I don't see it going away. Because now you have to start over.
Yeah, we're getting it over the 20
You
year.
know, $5 million a year or whatever. So it doesn't really go, even if you call it a fee, it doesn't really probably ever go away.
And in that discussion, if we did go the go bond route, there's a lot of interactions we can have with cities and other cities at the time to see what they're doing. When Pleasant Grove adopted their transportation utility fee 9 years ago, they had 35 or $40 million they were behind on their roads. Understand that if you look at Dave's number, you start tripling that, and but they've been putting in $3 million a year because they have a much larger population and commercial district. So they've been using that transportation utility fee for 10 years. And so those original 30, they might be cut up on, but now they've got another 30 that are now 60 that's come online. So
So, John, cause you're right, we can't spend 2 hours at each one of these, although if the council would like to, more than happy to, you can suspend the 9 o'clock rule. But if our goal here is to prevent further deterioration of the full road build, could we start with whatever that amount is with the property tax or transportation utility fee, whatever it is, so that we don't let that 5-year or 6-year fall back into the 4? Could we do that on an incremental, whatever the council wants to do, fee or whatever, and then take the money that we've got now and fix the 0 and 2 as much as we can with as Councilmember Watson has referenced the $2 million? that'd probably help us with stuff around the Kings Road and stuff. So Dave, what would it take to keep, let's say, half of the 6 years, 5 years, to stop that from falling into the 4 years? That could we save half of the 229,000 linear feet?
Yeah, I mean, just off of the ballpark right now, I think you're safe to say it's half.
Okay, so if that's 115,000, right?
Correct.
And is that in the $45 category?
That's in that $45 category.
Well, that's a square yard.
I think that's a linear foot.
Foot
We, yeah,
They
no,
converted it.
we converted it.
converted.
It's $5 a foot.
I thought it was $5 a foot after you converted.
That was a
That's
That was a
square
square
foot.
foot.
square foot.
So we just converted from square yards to square feet. And so,
So what's the
but-
number?
Yeah.
well, so you just,
Is it 45 for chip seal for a square yard?
so it's 4 square yards and 12 feet wide by 3 feet linear, right? So if you convert every single one of those linear at 12 feet wide, right? You could do the $45 a square yard.
Right.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's where, it's like kind of what the mayor's saying, right? So that'd be the $45 at the 115.
Yeah, which is $5.1 million.
Yes.
$5 million.
That's correct.
Then you take your transportation utility fee of 900,000, plus the 900,000 you're getting from Class C road, and use that to do 0 to 2.
And you're somewhat protecting yourself because it's got the 5-year warranty, right? That's I mean, pretty cool to just keep track of it and try to see if there's any problems that they come back and fix it.
So what we'll do, council, then is we'll look at that range and come back with, if we were attacking those numbers the mayor just talked about, what roads we would do and how much we think we could get accomplished and what that cost would be. And we'll bring that back as, if we can next week, if not, the following 2 weeks later, because we really need that decision by, it's June 22nd or something is the final budget when we're deciding. Well, let me put it this way. Sounds like we're heading to truth and taxation just on the conversations we've been having tonight and others. So we really have till August to get the final stuff, numbers crunched. But I still would like to talk about it. Maybe it's the work session in June. We only do transportation utility fee and talk about this. Everyone
Sounds great.
okay with that? And,
Sounds like fun.
and we'll try and I'll get some numbers from Zions, for example, with what are bond rates, and we'll just do it. The nice thing about Go bonds is they are cheaper because it is guaranteed money because it's against your tax bill. So people can't default on their tax bill. So it is, of all the rates for municipal bonds, it is the cheapest. Okay,
That was the easy one, right?
that was the easy one.
Oh, good.
That's not true. I'm sure there's bound to be one that's easier on here. Next conversation is about salary study and our salary policy. And I know that we've talked about this a little bit. The Citizens Budget Committee talked about it. The reality is, in my impression from working with Katie and doing this study the past couple of years, is we are still behind our market rate. Our current policy is that our goal is to be, for our employees, the target to be at the 50th percentile, which means the average pay. So, and then we go up 10%, down 10%, and people are in that area. We have several folks who are currently below 90% of what the study says is the average. And we have quite a few others who are below our goal for them. So like as an example, if we have a water worker 3 who's been a water worker 3 for 4 years, our goal is to have them not at the 90% number, but at the 100% number. Because when they start as a water worker 3, they start at the 90% number and then they grow as they learn. And we have folks, and I picked a water worker 3 just randomly, but who are, you know, might be on that in their position for 4 years at 93%. Some positions move faster than others. A good example is in the police officer realm. Sergeants typically move from their base to the highest goal over a 6 to 7 year period, because it takes a little longer to learn everything. But a frontline officer should move from a PO1 to the top of their range in about 4, and hopefully advance to PO2 in that 3 to 4 year range. And you know, so the big question that seems to be kind of brewing is that still the policy that we want to follow? And then there was a question brought up in the Citizen Budget Committee about is the study, the system we are relying on, reliable enough? One of the things that was brought up in it is, if you look at the study, when we look at cities of our size, it'll say, we look at what they actually pay the individual and what the average pay is. A lot of those cities only have one person in that position. So when you look at the actual, there's 4 numbers: the minimum, the maximum, the median, and the average. And if you only have one person in that position, they're all the same. So every single person in that position makes $20 an hour because there's one person. So they're the min, the max, the median. But the system is not perfect. There are flaws in it. One year we found that, I think it was West Valley City Recorder was making, what was it, $1.6 million because someone moved a decimal point. The nice thing is, the nice thing is that those that are way out of whack, it's easy to catch, right? I mean, it was pretty easy to figure out. And so we moved the decimal point and kept the integrity of the number. But it's not flawless because there's data entry errors. We have had some positions that move quick. Police has been one of those that's moved very quickly the last 3 to 4 years. Another one is some of our public works positions have moved pretty rapidly. An anomaly that we saw this year is Farmington, who is a city of our size, right around 23,000 people. They started using the system. So Davis County typically pays a little more, and we saw an uptick in our rates. And so there's all these things that kind of come into play. But what I really need from the council is some sort of a conversation about, is 50% our goal? Is the 90, the 10% higher and lower than that the right range? And then historically we have capped out our max. So we said an employee can only get up to this much in 1 year, unless there's a promotion. And right now in the study, it's 10%, which is the number we used 2 years ago. Last year we used 6%. In that time frame, we have 3 people who are on that max out scale every year. So 2 years ago they hit the 10%. Last year they hit the 6%, and this year they would hit the 10%. If you look at just the last 2 years, which is the 6% to the 10% now, I think there's 11 people who would fall into that, where they've maxed it out the 2 years in a row. And then it's not cheap. Rough calculation is that the cost, when you add the benefit on top of it, because his salary goes up, our URS contributions go up, it's about $500,000 this year. To bring everyone into the pay range. Mayor?
John, how many people are already at the 100 or 110%? I think when I looked at the schedule, there's like 15 that are already at their targeted pay.
Yeah, so 17
are already at the targeted pay.
Correct. And in years past, we've always done it. We always call it a market increase, but we've always had a minimum market increase. 3 years ago, it was 50 cents. Last year it was 3%. So we've modified it a little bit, but there also has always been that. I would think for tonight, because again, I'm not sure this is an ending discussion, is it'd be nice to know kind of the council's feelings on those numbers. And then if someone would like to sit down with me and go through it, or two of you, we can't have three, but if we can go through and talk about the numbers. I know that some members of the budget committee have volunteered to help dig into the numbers a bit too, to just verify that we have confidence in the integrity. I feel good about the system. I think Katie does too. But you know, we want to make sure everyone else was comfortable too. So, yeah.
Can I clarify, because I think you mentioned several times that our team members are thinking 0 is the number that is targeted. I have not heard anybody say 0. So I just want to clarify that it's 0, it's not 0.
Yeah.
Because I think somehow that got out in the realm of things.
Well, we had someone from a city to our south approach some of our employees and say, hey, I heard 0, so come work for us. We're doing what's
Sounds like a
Ogden
good
doing?
trick, make up a lie and start poaching from another city.
Yeah. So Ogden's doing 3 to 5 this year. And so they were saying, you know, you'll get a bump.
And just my take for whatever it's worth. The council has not been shy about spending $400,000 or $500,000 to buy a piece of equipment. Those assets are secondary. The biggest asset we have is our team, because if you don't have a team, they can't operate that equipment. Now, I surely understand that you can only pay what you can afford. But I think, as the council makes their decision, they need to understand the fact is that the greatest asset the city has. I mean, you know, Bowen just took us on a tour, right? We won't take into effect the driving. But I mean, you look at the knowledge that he's built up about our city and our roads and what's going on. So whatever decision you make, I would just encourage you to keep that in mind, knowing that, yeah, funds aren't unlimited by any means. But I would hope you keep that in mind as you make your decision, whatever that is.
So you did make an extra statement in there at the bottom about the 401k thing. Do you want to chat about that?
Oh, yeah, in the budget, it currently includes an adjustment to the 401k policy to come into line with more of what we're seeing in other cities. So instead of a guaranteed 3%, which is what currently happens, and then we would match 3, so employees could put in 3% and end up with 9%. The suggestion is to move to a match of 4%. So if they put in 4%, the city will match 4%, and they'll still end up with an 8% total contribution. It's a little bit extra on the employee. It's a little less for the city overall. But I think that in looking at it, to help make the salaries happen, that's a compromise I feel comfortable having with the employees and saying, hey, here's a way to get more money in your pocket on payday, understanding that that 1% over 20 years can be impactful in someone's retirement. So.
And, you know, I've always believed that to help those who are willing to help themselves.
Yeah.
And, where I came from, there was the automatic 3%. But then the company matched 50% of the next amount up to 6%. So their maximum was 4.5%. This way, the city's putting in 2/3, the employee putting in 1/3 under the current situation. And I know things are tight and maybe everybody can't put that amount in, but it does accumulate over time. But
And if
I kind of lean towards, you know, a match of whatever they're willing to put in, the city will match up to X amount, but.
Okay, to make sure I understand it, current state of the 401k for the employees is if they're contributing nothing from their paycheck, they get an automatic 3%?
correct.
Okay, so, and then if they contribute 3%, they get a 3% match. So they're up to 9% total that they're
Correct.
working
It's
with.
100% match, and that 3% is not unusual because you have to have a safe harbor for highly compensated. So the associated, I'm not saying they were that brilliant or anything like that, but the 3% was automatic because if you run into that highly compensated situation, it disqualifies your plan. So I'm not against having a minimum match, but I think after that, should be equal between the
Well,
city and the employee.
and that's not a route I thought, but if that was the switch, then the city's percentage would still would technically go down, but there'd still be that guaranteed amount. Because we do have some employees who, for one reason or another, cannot afford the 3%. I mean, just
Right?
it's tight. And so if that was another way, to the mayor's point, you could do a 3% guaranteed with a 1.5% match for the next 3% the employee puts in. And then that would still allow those who maybe are tight to get that little extra. But then the match would be at 0.5% as opposed, or, 50% instead of the full. And that would end up meaning that an employee would end up with 7.5% if they put in 3%. Which, in the grand scheme of things, if you're a tier 1 employee, is probably more than enough. If you're a tier 2 employee, it might not be enough. Because
You have the pension on top.
there's a difference in the pension plans for the URS, where a tier 1 employee gets a maximum benefit of 60% of their salary, and the tier 2 gets 50%.
Don, do we know how many of our employees are putting in the max?
All but 9. So we have, right around 9 that don't put anything in.
No, I'm talking about the max out they put in.
Oh, I'm pretty sure all of those put in 3%. We have some that put in more.
Are you talking about the max annual contribution? He's talking about
Oh,
how many employees put,
You're gonna be at close to 20%. I don't, that's,
But you're saying the majority of our employees are getting 9% of your putting into their.
yeah. And so, we don't have hardly any that are hitting the max for because the contribution, I think, is 17.5.
no, it's more, it's over
It's
20
20 now.
now.
Unless you're old like me, then.
So-
Yeah.
Yeah.
so what's your,
23,000.
there's gotta be estimates behind this. What you're estimating or guessing that if the plan changes from the 3-3-3 structure right now to the 4-4 structure, if it changes to that, are you estimating a savings of sorts? Because to the mayor's point, those that are helping themselves help themselves, and those that don't aren't getting it.
Yeah, so we would assume that those who are putting in the 3% would move up to the 4, and those that are putting in 0 would stay at 0. And so you'd be saving the 2% plus those who don't put any in. So that the way that our Excel spreadsheet is built, it can't remember the exact number now off the top of my head, but I feel like it saved the city $50,000 or $60,000 in 401k contributions. Understanding that was then being moved to the salaries. I mean, that was kind of the way. I think
2% savings or 1, because max 9 now and then go to 8.
So it'd be a 2% savings because the employee would put in 4% instead of 3, and the city would put in 4% instead of 6.
It's a savings because things are tight. I don't know how many more
Would go the extra percent. Yeah, that is true.
Have
So
you
there's
run
really,
this by
yeah,
our-
there's really no way to know.
Have you run this by the staff?
No, a couple of the department heads we've talked about if we felt like that was something we could get behind. And I think it was pretty much contingent on getting the salaries across the finish line.
Yeah, 'cause to me, it's the total compensation. I think, I think that was what the budget committee was talking about, is that there's a lot of other health and stuff that we're doing more of that I think some cities are doing less of, vice versa for some of the other things, and versus, an hourly rate. I think, and I don't know if that's even a possibility to say this is your total compensation. So I know some companies have done that in the past for me, but I guess to me, it all comes down to retention, and whether or not you keep that employee. So that's the tough part, is how do you know exactly? And if you stick to what they know, meaning what I'm more apt to say that, especially if the total compensation is taken in tow, as opposed to just picking the hourly rate and sticking with that. I do agree that you have to stay competitive, but at the same time, if we're not to the mayor's point, I think budget committee, same thing, is that if we're not making enough money, you know, we have to keep our services. And so if we can't, anyway, it's more expensive to find and train and get another employee that's been doing, you know, spectacular because we lost them to somebody else. I know that. And so I don't want to change what we're doing, but at the same time, we have to be respectful of the citizens that, you know, hey, you know, because I think that's maybe where zero came from, because was it Weaver County, somebody got 0% this year, wasn't it? State, that's what it was.
Other
So-
teachers. But I think the question that I would ask if I was sitting in your seat, which I'm not, is, can you afford to? And can you afford not to?
Mhm.
Because, you know, you put all the money into the services, right? If you don't have anybody to provide the
It's
services
not
or
gonna
competent
work,
people providing services.
Cause experience, I mean, that's one of the industry problems right now, is that all the people that have experience are retiring. And that's been a huge problem, at least in my industry, that 3 years, okay, so we got 3 more years.
No. He told us how old he was. It's not retiring anytime soon.
But no, that's my point though, is that some of the people that even if they're young, I mean, are moving on or changing, and I think the point of the city is to keep those people as long as we possibly can and not have a revolving door. And especially for its public safety.
Sorry, but remember, that's why I think, you know, to John's point, looking at the 401k, because, you know, employees that are living paycheck to paycheck, they can't take their 401k to the grocery store, right?
Yeah.
They can't take their salary to the grocery store. So, you know, I think most of our employees aren't, you know, a lot of them have second jobs just to make it. And, so if you start taking pay away, that's really critical, or they can't keep up, but I know there's a balance. I'm not saying there's no limit. That's what the council has to decide. I'm just throwing out things for you to consider as you make the decision.
And one thing we talked about, and I'll give Jamie the credit, because Jamie Jones used to always say, who's the most important employee at the city? And we would fight over which one it was, but it's either a police officer one, or it's a water worker one. Because those are the two positions that could cause the city the most liability, because they're not as trained. And, they don't have the experience. And I know they'll sound like the same thing, but those are a little two different things. And so right now in Dave's office, we haven't had a turnover in 2 years. So we have water, yeah, exactly. Knock on the table. We have water workers. Our least experienced water worker is actually 3 years.
It's 2, he's right at 2.
He's right at 2.
But there is a plan, and that's the thing I think we talked about, was it last year, the year before, is that there is a plan that they're incrementally increasing as they go. And it's sort of performance based, because that's what I was trying to wrap my head around, I think, last budget committee, is that, you know, is this merit-based raises, or is it, because incrementally you're going up based on years anyways, and like you said, there is a COLA as of sorts, right? Versus the pay raise.
Yeah, so the one thing, and I didn't make it very clear earlier, but what we have is, so someone starts at 90%, and then our goal is over the next, call it 5 years, they should grow to the average at 100%. But here's some benchmarks they have to hit.
Right.
And they have to stay out of trouble. So if they get in trouble, they could lose a percentage or 2 points. And then once they get that, call it 5 years of experience, they stop moving and they stay at 100% until they grow into the new position by doing more, learning more, or being better. And that, so we don't have just a straight step system in the city where if you've been here 20 years, you will make, 40% more than you did when you started. It is that maxes out once we figure they've hit that line. And then usually if we have those that kind of stagnate at the line, there's 2 reasons. One, they're very happy with what they're doing. And they don't, we had an officer who was here for a long time. He did not want to be a sergeant. I think he became a master officer. Very happy running patrol. Didn't want to do anything else. And he held at that 100% number. But then we've had others that after 3 years, they became a sergeant because they progressed so fast, so quickly, and showed a skill set that they moved. And so That's one thing I like about our system. It's not a straight step and grade system.
But at 100%, you're not getting zero, you're getting whatever that COLA is, right?
Well, that's a
the
conversation.
question.
We've always done, we call it a merit because it's based on you have to be performing. And we have in years past told people, you don't get a raise because here's the reasons why.
Okay.
But in the past, we've always done some sort of minimum. And in the current plan, it includes a 3% minimum. CPI this year, was about 2.51 or something. So it's a little better than what CPI did.
So how do you address the employees that are quite above what the data suggests they should be at? How do you address the minimum increase for them because they're already, I mean, by data, it's hard because all these people have a face and they're all performing a very important job. But by the data, they're getting paid too much. So how do you handle the minimum increases on those folks? I think you said there's about 17 employees in the city that are in that boat.
So there's a reason, like whereas an example is that we have a couple positions in the city where we show what we compare to with a small city, but we've actively made the decision we are going to pay higher than that because we're trying to attract talent to help us. So we're getting closer to what the big cities pay, for lack of a better word. I don't want to single anybody out, but they are typically the positions that help us manage our growth, are in leadership positions or things like that. And it's not me and it's not Dave, just so it's clear. And then there's a few others where they have we've moved them into the position they're in now and not reduced their salary as part of an accommodation. So that's an HR thing that we won't deal with. And then there's a few people where their positions didn't move. And so they were a little high, and then the last couple of years of the minimums have pushed them even higher than they would be. And the market isn't moving because it may be a position that a lot of people want. We don't have anyone in our city that does it, but CSI is a job that's really hard to get because a lot of people want to do it, and there's a lot of people graduating in it. I don't know how fast that's moving, but as an example, that might be a reason. And then we have a few folks where they got a promotion that moved them, and then that job title just stagnated. And the same thing, the percentages have worked to keep them or to move them up a little bit. Yeah, Mayor.
I just, for the council to consider also as they make the decision. You can put whatever cap you want on there. You can do whatever you want. But if the policy is truly to pay at market and you don't do that, all you're doing is deferring the problem that you have to catch up later. So you're just pushing that down the road. So to me, it's, you're looking at the policy, sorry, Councilmember Watson, I think you didn't raise your hand.
That's fine. Goodness.
I just think you need to understand what the consequences are, because it's just like I'm saying, if you want to defer putting money into capital projects, all you gotta do is figure out how to catch that up next year, right? And it's the same with salaries. If you believe that the survey is right and you believe you've got a good policy, you can do whatever you want, but the ramifications are if you don't, all you're doing is creating additional risk for the city and deferring that for someone else to have to deal with.
I was just gonna bounce off of what you had as well. I feel like not long ago, we had the mid-year conversation come up and we said no to that, knowing that the increases would be coming soon. That's the annual. And I feel like we would be going back on what we already said if we didn't stick to what we said. We said we would continue with the plan for the annual market plus the 50th percentile. And so I feel like we owe it to the employees on that. But I mean, maybe the discussion is still up if we want to continue the mid-years or not. Maybe that's a slippery slope to
No,
do mid-years.
we've said we're not going to do mid-years,
Yeah.
Other than we'll look at the data, right? So the council will see the data, but it won't be a council discussion or anything like that. Just because it was causing more headache than it was than a benefit.
Yeah, so I feel like we've already said we would do this and we need to be true to that. But the other thing that I wanted to bring up, that hasn't, I don't think's been brought up yet today, is that these numbers that we're going off of are last year's numbers. And so even if we brought everyone up to this average point, that's last year's average. And so it's not like we're trying to go set the bar on a new higher price for employees.
So yeah, what I put in the staff report is that if you look at the data, some of the numbers that we're comparing against were inputted into the system July of last year. And some were done, I think the most recent was February.
Oh, okay.
But a good chunk of them, the majority are kind of in that July to September range. And so you could argue we're a little behind.
Right.
However, and this is something I really, maybe I won't go there. This is a good place to work. The culture is really good. That's it.
And it hasn't always been that way.
Yep.
2 or 3 years ago, wasn't that great, right?
Yeah.
But I think, with the efforts the staff's made, it's changed a lot. But the other option you have is, if you prioritize your most valuable assets, maybe there's something else that's not needed as much as retaining and retracting employees. I don't know exactly what that is, but those are sort of options you can look at. Because, just, if nothing else changed, if sales tax didn't go up, went down $500,000 is what, John, about
10% of sales tax.
property tax. Is that
Oh.
what you'd have to increase, right?
Oh. It's 20% of property tax. Well, it's, yeah, 15.
Property tax about 3 million,
Yeah.
so about 16.5%, right?
Mhm. And right now, as I mentioned in my staff report, we're 28,000 shy on the budget, and that it currently includes a 4% property tax increase. So,
And a 2% sales tax increase.
and 2% sales tax increases, yep. Plus the growth number for property tax. There's 75,000 in growth for new buildings that are coming on the ridge, the rolls that are under construction right now.
To be honest, so, I mean, after talking all that, I still think what you have in that last paragraph is probably what I would be leaning on. So,
Meaning the 3% and the adjustment to the 401k.
sorry, cost of living, 3%.
Yeah.
So you're saying minimum 3% and the change in the
The max
401k?
10. That includes a max of 10.
I think the proposed change on the 401k is fair, considering each employee here that's full-time has access to the state pension. And we're not, I don't know, it just seems fair for those that are willing to contribute. They will get the 4%. But the trade-off being that we consider moving forward with this 3% minimum and 10% max.
Okay.
That's in my mind, that's the way that it makes it fair. Because we're trying to be fair with the employees. We're trying to be fair with taxpayers as well. And I don't know too many people that, depending on their job or what they do, anywhere between that 3 and 10% is a reasonable increase per year, depending on where you're at salary wise.
I just had a question. We wouldn't, change the 401k on a regular basis. This is a rare.
No, this would be setting a new policy moving forward.
Right, I'm just saying next year, when we say the 3 to 10% again, we can't say we can do this because we're doing the 401k even more.
So, I mean, I agree that what you're saying is that there's that kind of soft commitment you're making is we're not gonna just chip away every year. With that understanding that if we are really doing a market study and we're doing a benefit market study, then as those come into line with what everyone's doing, if everyone in the I mean, I think I might have sent Chris a copy of a benefit study that kind of shows we're right mid-pack, but every city's so different.
Yep.
There's a county that does 75% and there's some cities that do 100%. So we're kind of in the middle, but that might change.
Some cover dependent, some cover, some don't. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things, it's all over the map, and that's why I was trying to say it's hard to get a total compensation thing done because it's hard to compare against everybody.
Yeah.
So.
But I understand what you're saying is, I think that if the council approaches it, understanding that it's a new council next year, that it's not just a chip away every year, but we're trying to bring everything into alignment and find a good, fair compromise. And I'm glad JD brought up the taxpayers, the business entities who are taxpayers too, the residents, and the employees. So those kind of groups, it's important. So yeah.
I don't like taking away benefits, but as long as we're giving it towards salary, but I still don't like taking away benefits. Because we've taken them away before and they never come back. But like the mayor said, you can't take your benefits to the grocery store.
And I would want to make it clear that this is not, I'm not
Yeah.
saying this is a promise to bring it back to
Yeah,
what it was.
I understand.
Because when we did that in 2008, it took 9 years to come back. And that's how the city didn't used to do any contribution to the 401k. And so we brought it back.
Approximately when did it come back? The 401k?
2017,
17?
2018.
Yeah.
I was on the council, so it was within the last 8 years. You were on the council.
Is this 401k change something that you're doing a market study on as well, and other cities are doing this as well, or?
So I've been looking at the information, and there's a wide range. And at the 333, we were at the top.
Okay.
And so this is moving it down, is bringing us closer to the middle. Most cities are in that 3 to 3.5 for match. And I didn't see another city except for maybe one that was giving anything. You didn't have to contribute anything at all.
Okay.
So my personal feeling, we've worked so hard over the last how many years to try to get the employees fairly compensated that I say we just move forward.
Okay.
We want that. We want them to feel valued.
Okay. And most of them really like working here. And, well, you hate to say, I always tell people I want to be the second best city in Utah, right? Because you can't be the first, because to be the first, you have to be the best in everything. But I think being second best is pretty good, right? And so I always hate to speak in absolutes, but I think that, and I also think that the employees will understand how the council's wrestled with this, and they will appreciate this. I don't want to call it a gesture, but I think this commitment to staying on the course we've been on. And so you might get emails from some of them saying how much they appreciate it. So
I just wish we could somehow get those that are not contributing.
and we've been talking about it. We've been talking about it. Katie has been doing a lot of work, and honestly, we used to only have, it used to be just around 60% that were contributing. So we've moved up closer to the 85% contributing.
Oh, that's good.
And for me, tier 2 especially, I'm a tier 2 employee. The benefit is not as good. And so with Social Security and that retirement number at 50, call it 50%, there'll be people who will still need to work well into their 70s. They won't ever fully retire. And some people choose to work into their 70s. Some people volunteer for council and mayor and things like that, and they just love it. Okay, let's jump on to property tax. And I want to, in this discussion, I think we've talked a little bit about what we're going to be doing with transportation utility fee, and I really want to focus on, do we want to really start talking about solidifying a policy on the two options, which is we only increase property taxes when we need them, or we do a little bit every year. And I know that that conversation is a little imploded with the transportation utility fee because we're still having that, but so maybe this is a short discussion. Does anyone have really a strong feeling or something we need to add, or do we just want to jump onto our utility rates?
Well, maybe I'll take the opportunity to speak first. I think everybody on the council knows I've always been an advocate for increasing it. Minimally, but increasing it every year, so I think we owe the citizens that responsibility to try as best we can, to try to keep up with inflation as best we can.
I hate making it a random number, and I think when you say inflation, you know, what does that mean? And I think that's what I was trying to struggle with, and then when technically our property tax goes all to public safety, then really you need to pick a public safety number, you know, like what was the statewide increase to, you know, wage, you know, public safety wages. I don't know. I mean, something like that, but at the same time, it's a tough number to come up with because every year it seems to be different, you know, and oh, we should have said this way. And, you know, that was a couple years ago and picked a number and it should have been different. And last year, you know, anyway, I struggle with coming up with a number versus a small number, like you said. So, and at the same time, it could be more. Depends on what's going on. And that's the thing that frustrates my wife a lot, but, and then I get yelled at, but, you know, it's one of those things that, you know, you don't get yelled at.
Sorry, I just love the commentary.
But it's true. If nobody's spouses yell at them, they're not doing their job. Anyway, everybody knows because they're like,
You know, my wife has never yelled at me.
stop it. And you're not saying anything.
Never.
You haven't,
has
you
ever
just
yelled
haven't
at
said a word, haven't you? Anyway, so, I lost completely what I was doing. But, I mean, this is one of the biggest things that, you know, walking door to door, stop raising my taxes. You know, I mean, and they don't care what it's for. They don't. And then that's the one thing that, I struggle with the most is that, you know, sure, $12 a month or whatever it is, you know, for certain things, for some people is, it's no big deal. But or a widow at home, that's her only major thing. She doesn't have a couple of meals because of it. And you're like, you know, I mean, to me, that's what I think about when we're talking about these minor increases. I think that's why council didn't raise it for many years. So at the same time, I know from what my job is material costs go up every year. And so every year the city does not increase their operating costs. It means that they're either paying their employees less or they're eating into their savings. Those are the only two options. So.
Chris, would it be, because if you look at this, just to your point, I think you have a good point there. Let's say that this year's average salary increase in benefits is 5 or 6%. That's $500,000, right? Let's say next year it's 3%. That's still $300,000. That's 10% increase in property tax.
Right.
If sales tax doesn't supplement it. So maybe the situation would be the council passes a policy that every year they will have a truth in taxation hearing. And will be dependent on what's needed, but if you're realistic in it, unless we get into a really bad situation, nothing's gonna go down in costs. So you know that probably there'll be some increase every year. So maybe the policy is that there'll be a truth in taxation every year and it'll be dependent on needs.
Yeah,
Because
and
you
I
can't
think,
set a specific.
and the other goal is to raise up your other three-legged stools so that you can, when you fully build out, you're not totally dependent on property tax. And that's why we're doing all the commercial stuff, which is gonna be huge. Cause then you don't have to do that other property tax thing. Anyway, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, I feel like we've talked about this raising by 3 to 5% for a long time and have already come to this philosophy, but it feels a little bit like a joke now that we just said we're gonna increase it by 40% for the roads, so. I don't know, this should have been first or something. I don't know.
but if you make that policy, you can always go zero, right? You always can make a decision, but if you send the message to the citizens that
Right.
we're going to have a truth and taxation hearing every year. We don't know what the number would be. It could be zero, it could be whatever.
Yeah.
At least they know that that's gonna be looked at every year seriously.
My biggest fear is a refresh of council members that come in and want to be the hero and do 0%. You know, when there are so many needs, there are so many things that need to be done. We're just behind the 8 ball in so many ways. That is like one of my biggest fears. Because that's how popular is it to say we're going to not have a tax increase? Talk about a popularity type of thing. And, you know, I feel like even though it sucks, it really sucks to make these decisions. And, you know, I don't see any extra money in my pocket this year personally. And I'm trying to figure out, the way that I pay my mortgage, I do my taxes separately, so it's not in an escrow. I'm like, crap, I'm gonna have to figure out how to come up with that check, dang. So, it is not something that I take lightly as a personal tax, someone that's paying taxes himself. But at the same time, I just see so many needs in so many areas that we need to continue on, that it just feels like the right thing to do.
But what
But-
percentage would you pick?
What percentage? Oh, I don't think we're there yet. But once we're to a more, and I don't think we'll ever be to a comfortable place. Every year I keep thinking, yeah, we're gonna be to a better place. And we are getting better. I really do feel like we are. But I less and less, I'm starting to feel like you can't put a number to it. But to Mayor Berube point of potentially putting an ordinance on the books that you have a truth and taxation meeting every year, no matter what. Just so, even if there's a 0% year and you get to have a victory lap at a truth and taxation and say, hey, we called you all here to say that you might have a tax increase, but we're not. You know, that it seriously sounds crazy, but it sounds good, because then you could at least report the positives of why you didn't increase taxes.
People do generally show up to truth and taxation, right? They don't necessarily show up to council meeting, but it gives you an opportunity to explain to them the budget and the finances of the city. For those who want to learn about it, even if it is zero.
Yeah.
Didn't we talk one time, if I remember correctly, about actually putting in an ordinance that something like, and we obviously don't want to take somebody and put them in any council and put them in a position where they couldn't make a decision, but where you could say like a 3 or 4% ordinance in property taxes.
We've talked
What
about
was
it,
that?
but we just didn't, you know.
But here's the thing is it seems like even if we were to do that, it's a council would come in and change it. So it's probably moot, but
Well, if we did this idea of always have a truth in taxation, and in the ordinance say something about specifically that inflation happens every single year and we can't depreciate for inflation, maybe that reason will stand out. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it feels like the council is kind of at least open to that concept, so we can, we'll, if we'd like to put it in an official policy, an ordinance, something like that, I'll start putting some language together that kind of might say, this is, you know, these are some guiding principles that could then be incorporated into an ordinance or some sort of formal policy for the
you put
city.
irrevocable or something.
Like I say, it at least gives you an opportunity to explain for those who want to know what the finances of the city are spent on and you know, South Ogden's done this, as you know, John, for years. And the citizens now just understand that, they expect that, and I think the last time I talked to them, they get 2 or 3 of their taxation, because they know what the philosophy is in trying to take care and fund the city.
Yeah.
2 or 3 people.
Huh?
2 or 3 people.
And one thing that you've seen, council, in our truth and taxation is that we have citizens who participated in the meetings who come and speak on your behalf and say, you haven't been in the room in fighting the fight, and I have, and I've seen the council do it. And I don't know that there's a lot of cities that see that sort of positive citizen engagement in the process. So that's a nice thing we have going on here. So. Okay, we will work on putting that together. I might lean on ChatGPT a lot to help with that one. Next discussion is just utility rates. And we'll talk about them a little bit, real quick, or, as detailed as we can. In water, the 85 cents is to plan for future capital projects, particularly looking at our water meter change out. That's coming in the next 3 to 5 years. And then the 79 cent is the operational for increases in chlorine, salaries, and things like that. So water it's recommended to go up $1.64. Solid waste is 100% the increase of the tipping fees at the Weber County transfer station, and the 4% increase with our hauling company. So you call those a pass through. That's not something we have a lot of control with, other than we do contract. And our next year, as part of our budget discussion, we'll be going out to bid for our solid waste hauling vendor. So that's something to look forward to.
John, I have a question. We talked about interest income, which is pretty substantial, particularly in enterprise funds. Not including that in the operational, but that's kind of for one-time needs, because my concern is, as that goes away, all of a sudden the citizens are faced with some massive increase. So I don't know if when Jamie figured that out, if she considered the fact that interest income is probably not gonna be, it'd be nice if it is, but it may not always be at that level. And we're starting to count on that pretty heavily.
I did not have that specific conversation with her, but I will.
It might be good. I don't know how the council feels about that, but.
And I'll also include Peter in it, right? Because right now we're transitioning between Jamie to Peter, and I think it'd be good for him to be involved so he can help, since he'll be doing the budget next year, meaning the 27 budget. But no, that's a really good point, Mayor, because if we rely on money that isn't guaranteed for things that we need, then we run into issues. Next on the list is Central Weaver. That's a pass through. That is, they're charging us additional money, and so we will charge our residents that $1.07. In that conversation, the determination was that even though there are some increases in sewer, that there's a fund balance there that we can use to not increase our rate, and still feel comfortable with our needs moving forward, that we can accomplish our goals in our 5-year plan without needing any more for capital. And then stormwater, we've done what I just talked about with sewer. The last couple of years with stormwater, where we've gone down a little bit in the fund. And now we have a few extra requirements from the state come in, some salary considerations, and then some equipment. Wait, no, no, there's not equipment in First Storm, but there's a few just additional things there that need to be taken care of, and we're not going to be using fund balance anymore. So this kind of goes to the point the mayor just made. We've been chipping away a little bit at fund balance in Storm to not increase rates, and now our fund balance, it hasn't hit the floor, it's not at zero, but we've got a comfortable balance, and we can't chip away at it anymore. So we need to charge the extra $2, or that's the recommendation. Any areas where you'd like us to bring back additional information as we move forward with adopting the fee schedule?
What was that up to?
$5.42 per month. So right around $66 a year. Let's say 65. Okay. The next three topics, council, are somewhat philosophical, because we don't have a lot of information to provide you on user fees, except to indicate that the Citizens Budget Committee has been doing a lot of work. I know Chris sent out some, or Councilmember Culver sent out some stuff about some fees that North Salt Lake is doing. Dave and Crystal talked to me today about some fees that other cities are doing for development and inspections. And so I think that we've got a lot of people looking around this area to find, is there a few more dollars we can squeeze? Or sorry, is there more money we can get reimbursed appropriately for? So
For the soft, yeah.
yeah, so for that infrastructure, so a good example might be, we might be covering an employee's time on inspections, but are we sure we're covering their vehicle, their office space, their computer? Because as we've talked about in the past, we can only charge what it costs us to provide the service. And we have several employees who are in that, who do nothing but inspections, and or do nothing but provide services to the public, and their salary isn't covered by their fees. Some of them, I don't ever expect them to be 100% covered. A good example is Scott's position. I'm going to single him out just so he feels comfortable and confident. A good chunk of Scott's time is spent talking to existing residents about questions they have about their property for which they will never apply for a permit. And a good chunk of his time is spent talking with people, talking about adding buildings or adding subdivisions. And so I don't necessarily expect the planning department to pay for itself, because the sales tax that we get is helping cover the cost of the planning department to serve the residents who are paying the sales tax. So, and Scott has a comment.
Also, the state legislature has an entire section of state code that has requirements for cities to do regarding general planning, zoning, and other elements that if you're a city like, I'll pick on Harrisville, that Jenny, the city manager, gets to do with their planning commission and maintain all of those individual pieces. And John, luckily, doesn't have to do that. So I'm really grateful to be here, but the department does not cover itself the way the building department does, for instance.
Yeah. And yeah, in fact, we just talked about the 4 or 5 departments that cover their fees: water, sewer, storm, building is one. Almost nobody else covers their fees, which leads us into the next conversation about, are there departments that we can get to cover their fees? The quintessential topic on this is the aquatic center. Recommendation this year would be to increase the gate fee. That's my recommendation and Justin's, to help it pay for itself. Last year, the aquatic center, we raised it $2 for entrance. And the initial indication, and I didn't bring that number with me, was that we brought in $80,000 more in last fiscal year through the end of 2024. So it was really just like a month and a half. And the numbers are terrible because of the way the pool works. But that we brought about $80,000 more in people coming to the pool and paying more. However, that was offset by a substantial increase in chlorine that ate through all our profit. So we are recommending that it goes up. The conversation for the council is, do you want to do a step increase with a goal of eventually getting to the recommended by the finance department from last year of $11.50 to enter? Or do you want to just jump another $3, $2 to get there? This is not a, some of these are not decisions that have to be made tonight, but we need them made sooner than later. And the pool is one where the pool opens at the end of this month. So we probably by the 27th of May need to have a new fee schedule in place for the pool.
So is there resistance to do non-resident increase and leave the resident increase or same?
We eliminated the resident discount last year. so there isn't a non-resident, because what we found is everyone was a resident. And so we eliminated,
Talking to Justin, it was very difficult to monitor. It was more like labor intensive to try to check residency. I don't know how true that is or what, but it just seemed like it was more easy for their staff to just have it be a blanket rate.
You'd have families show up with all their extended family, and only one person has to show ID to say we're residents.
and again, the philosophy was, if the goal is for sales tax to not subsidize the pool, then the people using the pool should pay the full cost, resident or non-resident. And so that was part of the goal.
Cause I think part of the budget committee was the fact that, you know, North Ogden is subsidizing those that are not part of the city to use the pool. I guess that was I guess other cities have done it where there's a non-resident fee in there, not fee, but it's different, almost up to 50% different, but I don't know. I still think that's a viable.
Yeah, but you can go to Lauren Farr on the cheap and swim there and take advantage of Ogden subsidizing theirs, so.
Yeah, but I guess my point is definitely incremental. I don't want to slap a $3 thing on. I think, I can't remember if it was JD or somebody was saying, 50 cents, dollar, something to get it there.
I like the idea of just gradual increase for the next few years, 50 cents a year or something like that.
Okay.
I like $1, it's easier.
Well, Justin's recommendation would be that with the rate and taxes, it rounds to a quarter, to make it easier on folks as they're trying to count out change
He
at
was
the
going to the
register.
bank 3 times a day, sometimes for pennies,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we have
Oh,
to
yeah,
have
like
tax included. But, I talked to Justin quite a bit as well this week, and, the, idea that I got, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone who knows more, but, it feels like, the city council is harping on him all the time to have the pool pay for itself, and, to have him kind of prove that his job is worth it and that we need to keep the pool. And, he's been kind of bare bones more and more each year. And, it's been going fine. He's like, he gave the analogy of, if you were to paint a barn or something, I got the first coat on, so we're fine. I can't get the second coat on, but the reason I'm saying this is because he feels like if we wanted to entrust him with making the increase, selling the pizza instead of,
Concessions.
right, if he were over concessions, then he would need a year to kind of get this figured out. And maybe it would take some investments up front, but that, we only keep the 10 to 15% right now, having that be a third party. And if we were to, have Justin, and we couldn't do it this year, he'd need to hire lots and, but if we wanted to take that risk on and to try that, he thinks that it would be a profitable investment, and that it would be well worth the time and effort. Right now, where he's just barely making ends meet with his time and his staff, it's an impossible task. But if he had some advance notice and he had our trust in him and some investment, money up front, and he thinks that he could, in the long run, have the pool make a lot more money. So I just wanted to bring that up. I know it's been brought up before. He really didn't want to cause hard feelings by, turning away a great association that's been built for years. But he just said if the city council is really interested in having this aquatic center, be more valuable financially.
Then concessions would help a ton.
Yeah, and I think, but the key thing kind of conceptually is the fact that do we make the pool viable, or do we just say it's a service and we don't care how much it costs? I think that's where you're headed is, because parks don't make any money. And I think that was the budget committee, one of the theories is that, well, hey, we have to start charging for parks if we want to make that viable, well, that's not the point. The park is a service that you're never going to get any, you might get some Bowery stuff, but that's not going to cover the cost of all the stuff we have to do. So I guess the question is, how close do you want? And I think that's, in my mind, just looking at the numbers from the past 3 years, you had 2001 or end of year fiscal year, 2001, so June, you had 588, you have next year 496, the next year 503, and then ending 24, 576. So total revenue. So that it is going up. In fact, the end of year 2021 was the highest. But you're still not, like you said, what killed us was the chemical costs, and we're almost 100 grand in the hole again. We've added funds to it, so it's like the fund balance currently is 256. So, how much do we throw into it to make it more viable when, year to year, you're gonna be 100 grand in the hole? Do you just live with that, or do you push harder? And I guess that's the question, right?
Well, and Justin wasn't implying, and I haven't done the numbers, and I don't think he has either. He wasn't implying that we need to hand over money. He was just saying he might break even basically the first year. And
Well, and one thing that we'll talk about with the RDA and the tentative budget next meeting is talk about that Placer AI software and using some of that RDA money to pay for that, because we might find that as we look at some of these activities like the pool, like the Weaver, the football, our football program, and baseball, that we might see that there is a benefit that we're seeing from people who come into the city and then spend money before they leave, or spend money when they come in. I've always wondered how many more pizzas Little Caesars sells, because over there the trash is full
It's
of
full
Little
of
Caesars.
Little Caesars boxes.
And so, so that's some of the information, and this kind of goes back to that conversation we had on the transportation utility fee, is that the city over the past 6 years has really been focusing on getting out of that 12-month cycle and looking into the 5-10 year range. And so now we're starting to get the big picture, which is why it's a little scary. But that software, I'm putting a plug in partly because RDA money, I think we have some and we can afford it for a year to see how it works. But I think it might provide some insight on, are there things that we could be capitalizing on to generate more money? Not that I want to build pickleball courts and do tournaments, or soccer fields and do tournaments, but are there things we can do to bring money into the city that we're missing when it would be an easy lift? And I agree that Justin, my anticipation is we'll go out to RFP for concessions, and that Justin will provide an RFP that, 2 or 3 council members can review, because he is one of the most capable employees we have when it comes to, in a pinch, needs to figure it out and get things done. And that's not how he always operates. He's not always in a pinch, but I'm just saying that he has a lot on his plate, and I want to make sure that he's thought through everything without a lot of help from others on putting it together, just because it is a heavy lift to do it that first year. And then after that, he'll be golden. That first year is going to be a heavy lift.
Just a reminder to the council, that covers operating costs and routine maintenance. It does
Not
not build
depreciation.
any fund balance to maintain the pool long term.
Yeah.
So what again was our recommendation for a price increase on?
Uh, So right now we're at 8. Justin was recommending that if the council didn't do anything, he was still going to try and round it up to 825. So I would probably say that either 9 or 950, whatever number the council felt comfortable with, or 925. But on that 25-cent rounding with taxes, so that kids are counting quarters instead of pennies.
And there was some feeling that you guys were only thinking like 50 cents.
That's just, I'm throwing it out of
Just
nowhere.
throwing it out. Okay.
The idea is that we get closer and closer and closer to making money on it and or breaking even.
Yeah, for this plan to make.
I know that 50 cents a year is not going to make up the difference that you need. But I know that it's moving towards where it needs to be, and we're not risking people eventually turning away and saying, well, it's too expensive because it went up $3 per person for admission,
If we went from, I don't want to sound like I'm being in opposition to that idea, but I'm almost thinking I mean, if you brought 3 kids, let's say you brought your family, 3, 4 kids. If it's $1, that's only it's only $4, right? I think I would rather, take Justin's recommendation.
Which one was that?
To the,
I'm feeling, did you say 925 or 950?
Well, yeah, 9 or 950 would be his recommendation.
I'm personally thinking myself, 950, but that's just me.
Did we notice, the pool, have lower numbers when we went up by, $2.50? No, wait, just $2?
So I ran the numbers on the season for daily entries and they missed counting a few days, but there was gaps through all 3 years. It's gone up by 6,000 to 8,000 each year. Heat is a big thing. Like, I mean, if you look in June when it's 70 degrees, they'll have 14 people show up to the pool, right? But it looks to me like they've had more people come and they've sold less annual passes, which means more people are paying the full freight at the gate as opposed to the discounted annual pass, which the annual pass has gone up as well. And we'll come back with a recommendation that it's a multiplier of what the gate rate is. So we kind of say, hey, the gate rate's this. So we times it by 11.72 or whatever, and that's the annual rate.
The, last year number was $8 plus tax, which is $8.53, Justin told me, and so we went up from $6 as resident and $6.50 non-resident to $8.53. So I mean, that's, $2.53 or $2.40.
So then 950 would be $1.
I think at 50%, you're not catching up at all. You're actually falling behind. Because your costs with salaries, chemicals, etc., probably will exceed that. But I'm just doing a quick thought in my mind to Watson's point. If we went from $6 to $8, let's just say, that'd be a 33% increase, right? 2 divided by 6. And so you would expect if the attendance was the same, your revenue would go up 33%. Did they go up 33%?
No, they went up about 20.
So that would say.
Based on what I said.
Did go down a little bit.
Well, but
season passes are a factor too.
the hard thing is there was only half of the time frame in our fiscal year that was under the new rate. And so that's why it's hard that it's just hard to calculate it because of the way the fiscal and calendar years mess with each other.
Just $8 is what Brigham City pool is. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
That's what it says right now.
And Brigham City is probably the closest comparable in that it's got a slide, it's fairly clean and well maintained. We have residents here who go up there because they love it, and we have residents in Brigham City that come to our pool because they love it. So it's, but we are us and Brigham City are the ones that kind of set the rate and other pools follow. And I think the Roy City Aquatic Center subsidizes 300,000 to 400,000 every year.
Brigham's at least 100 as well. Last time too.
Not saying, but that's not an excuse. We can do better. We're going to be the second best pool in the state, right?
Roy Aquatic Center is $8 as well.
Yeah.
Small discount for younger children.
There's going into want to say closer to $9 $8.
Yeah. So the new Marshall White will be close to the same area that we're talking. So we will bring back some more details on that, council. This guidance has been good.
One last thing, the Citizen Budget Committee wanted us to talk about Sundays for the Aquatic Center. First of all, talking to Justin, does anyone know if that's feasible with labor and whatnot?
This year it would be hard because it wasn't an expectation he set for his staff. And so I think the recommendation would be to next summer, we hire with an expectation that we would do reservations on Sundays if we have a core group of kids who will work it. Our community is becoming more and more diverse, less people that are worried about their kids working on Sunday. And so he thinks he can build a team next year, but this year he doesn't know if he can. But he is exploring it, and we would, so it basically would be half of this next fiscal year. We'd be talking about Sundays as a
I
private
think
parties.
that's great if he starts to build the mental expectation of some of his lifeguards that that's something that we're talking about. I think that would be
I know it
fantastic.
wasn't just the fact that they would have to work on Sunday, but it was that he would need a greater number of lifeguards and staff.
Yeah.
And so he hasn't been able, he doesn't have the
Yeah.
time to hire the more that he needs.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
fine. I think just having the conversation with him and have him trending towards that would be really cool.
We did have more kids applied at the pool this year than we've had in the past, although we're still not turning away lifeguards. But for kids that are younger than 18, they cannot work more than 40 hours a week. They are 100% restricted, and the Department of Labor would be very upset if we exceeded that. Yeah.
I have a question. So what additional information is going to come back? The council can't make a decision on the fee tonight.
To set the fee, we just have to bring back the fee schedule with the amended fee schedule for the council.
I'm just asking what additional information is the council
Oh,
going to get? But they can't make the decision what the fee is tonight.
I can.
I'd be down for $1. Whatever the change makes it normal.
$9.50 sounds fine to me.
Whatever the number is. that
9 it
makes
is.
Or 9 is fine too. 9 is fine too.
So,
I'm $9.50 guys, so.
so they're currently paying $8.50 with sales tax. Justin's
$8.50?
recommendation would be $9.50 with sales tax.
Done.
Done.
Kind of
Great,
done.
good.
Yep, yeah.
Okay. Okay, did we answer your question? Yeah, so
About Justin, just exploring, trying to potentially prepare for that would be really good, because I think there's a large portion of our community that would take advantage of that.
and then he, and just so you know, Justin is also like, he's looking at using a few of the round tables as reservations, so people can reserve the table for a fee. Because what happens right now, Dave's wife does this, Ryan's sister does this. They go in as soon as the gate opens at 11. They throw their stuff on a table and then they leave, because you can come back all day long, right? So your hand stamped. And then they come back with their family 3 hours later and have a table. And so we thought if we could.
So that's the kind of people that they are, is what you're saying.
What I'm trying to say is,
Your
Justin,
sister, okay. Clarification, sister.
so to Christina's point, Justin is exploring other areas of revenue. And that type of approach is, I think, what the Citizens Budget Committee and Councilmember Pulver are talking about, that we want all department heads to look at. Are we leaving money on the table somewhere that we could ask? And the pool's a little different, but you know, is there just something that we should be charging more or charging for, based on use? And again, trying to not just impose it on everybody. Okay, we have 21 minutes. Rainy day fund. Council, this is something that conceptually you don't have to reach an agreement on tonight, but it would be good to know your thoughts on what do we use the rainy day fund for? Ryan, what do we use the rainy day fund for?
I thought Ryan's response was a really good response.
And that's,
How do you determine? what
yeah,
the
how do you
rainy day
determine?
fund is?
If you know what you're gonna plan for to use the rainy day fund for, why don't you just plan for it?
Okay.
So I mean,
Well,
I
to me-
don't know how you put a stipulation
So-
on what.
Well, it's something that's, you're not in the approved budget, but it needs to happen now
Right.
before the next fiscal year.
Correct.
So, yeah, you use the rainy day fund and make the amendment to the budget and then use it, right?
Because it's not something, it's
But
an
but it shouldn't-
unforeseen expense.
But it shouldn't be something that's, can be delayed. And then there's a lot of things I
It's like
saw.
a flood comes in and
Yeah.
ruins one of our roads. You have to fix it.
Never happens.
It happened on 1700. Yeah. Stuff like that, yeah.
But-
But I don't know.
I don't know how you.
Well, no.
But I think we need to just continue to have it in the budget, but my understanding is this year's budget, we peeled back on it, right? We peeled back on replenishing the rainy day fund, correct?
Peeled back on capital projects. So rainy
Okay.
day fund, which
Okay.
is the general fund balance is still projected at the end of the year to be at 25%. Which is which is a great spot. 35% is the max, 5% is the minimum.
We thought about 18, weren't we at 18 at one point?
We dropped down to 15.
15.
Which is, the internal floor.
Yeah.
The state let you go to 5. We said we didn't want to drop below 15. But I guess the question in my mind is, do you automatically turn to the rainy day fund? Let's say sales tax drops off 5%. You immediately turn to the fund balance, or do you first look and say, okay, we gotta make some adjustments in operations? To me, it's what threshold, because if you're just gonna use it, to Ryan's point, to balance the budget, then
No, that's not what I said.
what did you say?
I said it's a mid-year expense for you, I mean, not just to. When we were down at the league, they said, if a department spends all of their revenues or their budgeted amounts, but they don't generate their revenue, are they over or under budget? They spent under what they budgeted, but they didn't generate their revenue, are they over or under?
Well,
because you come-
expenses are
correct.
paid out of revenue.
So when revenue doesn't come in, we look at stuff, but if we have a expense, flood, sewer pipe break, water line break, whatever, and you need the money, that's what the rainy days fund is for.
But we didn't use the rainy day fund on the 1700 flood, is that right?
Well, so we used fund balance.
But we have enterprise funds for that.
Yeah,
Or
so I'm
Going
trying,
up to your plow truck breaks,
That's fleet.
but fleet doesn't have enough in their account to just buy a new plow truck.
Currently they do.
Well. All right, so, all right, go down to 5%.
well, so this is, I like at least having a floor of 15%. I like the mayor's approach of that we should already know if sales tax drops to 5%, what are some areas we're gonna look? Mike maybe on the Citizens Budget Committee sent over some ideas to Phil and myself, Citizen Phil, that said, here's the things I would look at. These are some recommendations. And I think that's very helpful to go through that thought process. Because if we're gonna scale back and say, hey, we're just gonna mow the parks twice a month instead of 4 times a month, then we can make some adjustments and still hopefully maintain resident expectations. But if it dropped by 10%, there is probably not enough things we could cut. We would have to dip into the fund balance a little bit and still manage residents' expectations. Because I always pick on recreation. Becca knows I pick on her, but if you eliminated the recreation program, you're also eliminating $200,000 of revenue. So you're only saving 100,000, even though on the surface, it looks like you're saving 40. And so there's conversations that would go on there. Some things that we've done in the past is you put a hiring freeze on. If revenues don't meet expectations, you eliminate it, or you just say, hey, we're not going to fill positions because you can save some money that way. And there may be an exception for police. Hey, it's a critical life safety if everyone's down, sometimes crime goes up. So there might be some exceptions, but there's options.
Were you looking for a percentage tonight?
No,
A
this is one of those, I want the council to think about it because I want to, now that we're on track with our 5-year plan and building into this 10-year long-term goal, I want to build an actual strategic plan for the city, which is basically just taking the 5-year plan and writing it down. And then that becomes the litmus test for every budget decision in the budget year. Hey, I want to do this project. Well, if you want to add it to the strategic plan, then let's do it. And that helps sift the wheat from the chaff. This is important, this isn't important. And hopefully will help guide us moving forward. One thing that's helpful is, and this is just, if we had 15%, then that would be roughly $1.5 million. As soon as you hit the $1 million emergency that rises to the level of a state emergency and triggers, or can trigger, you need the state to declare it, but federal dollars to reimburse. So in theory, with that 1.5 million, you should have enough to float for your projects till the feds reimburse. And if you look across all of the city funds, we would have enough money to float a lot of damage that could happen in the city while we wait for the feds to reimburse. Understanding that FEMA may not have as much money as they used to, and there's things in flux, but at least for now, I feel like we're fairly safe that we could handle most small emergencies.
I guess what I'm saying is the rainy day fund shouldn't be used as a tool to balance the budget.
Right.
I'm all for, emergencies, whatever the term is, whatever those definitions are, but, I think just have that as the balancing to the budget is not what they're funded for.
The mayor doesn't like my idea.
I always like your idea, Chris.
Did you know, what? Go ahead.
I always like your idea. In fact, I made a suggestion, which was not unusually ignored, is the fact that how we save for increase in police, because we're ultimately gonna need that, is we take the growth and we don't spend that on operational budget, we build that into fund balance. And we don't rely on that, then when we hire another officer, we don't have to go out and increase property taxes again. But the growth now has been wrapped into the budget and just used as operational.
The property tax growth.
The property tax growth, yes. I didn't say I didn't like your ideas. I only said I never called them a snitch.
Keeps on coming. All right.
So anyways, just a conversation, because I think as we talk about the strategic plan, it'd be nice to be able to write that down. These are the things we're saving. And you could even say, our goal is to have 25% and 15% is untouchable. And this 10% is used in these scenarios. And we only ever touch the 15% if the sky is falling.
In fact, I would say that the council should never forget that those revenue bonds, those sales tax revenue bonds are callable bonds.
Mm-hmm.
And you might want to make sure you have adequate reserves if those were ever called. And of course, that goes down every time we make a principal payment. But those are callable bonds.
Yeah, so that's call it $9 million at this point that we owe on the public safety building.
Hopefully it's below that now. We've made 2 or 3 principal payments.
Yes.
Did I do that? Oh, so the whole point of this conversation, I'm trying to understand, because we're at 25, you're saying we don't need to.
This was just
Okay.
philosophical, long-term, if we had time. So these last kind of items,
Okay.
well, with the exception of the CSO, was a, if we have time, we can really dig in deep.
Okay.
But we have 11 minutes.
Yeah, I don't feel like I'm going anywhere with it, but I am generally supportive of a 15% minimum on all the rainy day funds and trying to get closer to that 25 to 30% range.
Okay.
That's all I have to say
We're
on
at
that for now.
25 right now.
Well, I'm just, but
It's a
don't we,
comfortable
but
spot.
don't we have more than one?
Yes, so our capital project fund also has a fund balance in it.
Right.
So there's in theory $1 million in there that is currently not programmed to be spent in the next 5 years. So if you look at our general fund budget, if on our 5-year capital project sheet, the very first year shows $1 million minus, and that's our fund balance. It's kind of our capital rainy day fund. So we do have some cushions built in. Plus, we can do interfund loans, so we could borrow money from the water fund if they have it, or water fund can borrow from us if we have it. There's just a process to make that happen. So
What's the range that's recommended for the capital rainy day fund?
the state doesn't have any recommendations, but we like the $1 million.
Instead if a piece of property came up that we could apply for a
Right.
park or do something like that. But I would say too, you're getting into the deferral process again. Because next year, where are you gonna find the $300,000 to put in there?
And
And that's how the 5-year plan was built.
And this leads into the next topic,
Yeah.
which is the capital expenditures. And if we're not going to save money, my recommendation is that we not spend money. So currently the budget eliminated the McGriff Park bathroom install which is around that $300,000 range, because we're not putting currently any money into the capital expenditure. And so if you're not putting money in, you shouldn't take money out, is kind of the philosophy that I like. However, there are times you need to do, because it would be cheaper to do it now than then. I don't see the bathroom as one of those.
But John, you're just referring it to next year, so you've got $300,000 going into the fund next year. You had zero going in this year, and you pushed the bathroom. The next year, you've got $300,000 going in. Where's that gonna come from?
Your house.
Right.
No, but it's exactly right. That's the conversation is,
If you need it, you need it, right? Because we found out that what happens when you need it and you don't do anything, you still need it and the cost goes up.
yeah.
I'm thinking if we went to Associated Foods and we decided to name that bathroom the Neil Baruti bathroom. Maybe they would.
I think the
Well-
urinal named that.
Well, and again, this is that kind of like, that as we develop the strategic plan, if we cannot, this is just my impression, you cannot go more than 1 year without saving, because even going the 1 year, you've now, really next year, we need to find $600,000 to put in there to catch ourselves back up.
What
And
needs to be done there?
at the McGriff,
Yeah.
oh, the bathroom is, it just needs, the Bowery can stay, but the bathroom needs to be
The
redone.
whole bathroom.
Yeah, it's,
We couldn't get like plumbers and people like that in the city to donate some time to fix it?
we haven't asked, but they can give you a lot more details.
Sure, we haven't done what you're asking, we haven't, but we could, I mean.
You can go find the donated plumbers. That'd be great.
Well, so,
I mean-
Maybe they would be willing to.
The problem is that there's
Hit 'em
special,
up.
special
Yeah.
stuff that you have to do.
well, but no, so this is a good example, and other cities have found grants and other programs that help to find money. Now, those might be harder to come by now, but, I don't like comparing us to our neighboring city except for in jest, but they raised $155,000 from their residents for their pickleball courts next door. And we have had residents donate. But I feel like there's a lot of money out there that we're not getting because we're not asking. For people who'd be willing to write the check as opposed to us, taking it via tax or fee. Mayor.
So which brings up to the fact that in the 5-year plan, there's a $200,000 expenditure for design fees for Barker Park with no financing plan in place at all. So, we were told that there are all these people lined up, ready to make contributions. We haven't found them yet. We're still looking, but we haven't found them. We'll continue to look. But why would we spend $200,000 for a plan with no plan to finance? Because it's not in our 5-year plan, and if we're not gonna raise money in capital projects to pay for it, how do we ultimately get that kind of money? We've been told we're gonna get all these volunteers and people are gonna donate money. I asked the question how much that is, and nobody's come up with the answer yet.
So in theory, that $200,000 could come out of it would be an impact fee eligible expense, which is something different than our capital project money.
But what is it comes to the thing you've suggested several times, does the council have a plan for use of park impact fees, because you've identified, but still that would only probably pay maybe a third of the cost?
Well, so we would need 40 houses. Oh, so for the 200,000 or the full cost?
The full cost of the park. How are you gonna pay for that?
So in the impact fee plan, at 5,500 a house, give or take, the next 1,000 houses will,
$5 million on a $15 to $20 million project.
So it's in there as a, I don't remember the exact number, but it's Barker Park under that study is supposed to be 100% paid for by impact fees
How many years?
as quick as the houses come in.
But you're talking about $15 to $20 million expenditure. To Christina's point, how many houses is it, how long is it gonna take? Because what's now 15 or 20 will become 20 or 25 or 30 years, whatever.
Yeah, and I think that the point you're trying to make, Mayor, is that we can pre-build and then repay ourselves back if we have a plan to do it. And so the 200,000 this next year could come out of the 40 houses. I mean, we'll build more than 40 houses, but the 40 houses that pay a park impact fee could pay that 200,000. So we have an idea of what's going to go in and how much it's going to cost. Because the impact fee study is just kind of a thumb in the wind based on what the market is doing, and not actually what's going to be constructed.
Even if we don't have the full amount to do the park, can't we do it in phases? So we do the study, we pay for the study through those 40 first houses that John's suggesting, and then we do soccer field first or something, parking lot first, then soccer field, and phased. I don't know. It just feels so overwhelming when you think about the total cost.
When Eric and I met with one of the people who will likely bid on the design RFP that we put out, we specifically said we'd like it carved into sizable phases so that we could do it that way. So, if, for example, if we had every single apartment and townhome that's out there come online, it would generate somewhere between $5 and $8 million in impact fees. So we could complete the island and maybe a portion of the rest, if we broke it into phases. So.
Okay. I think it only take about 3,200 homes to build that park.
And if you believe the economists, we will have another 7,200 homes in the next 20 years. That's what the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget is projecting for us by 2045. Double in size in 20 years.
7,200 homes.
I feel like, I'll just say my opinion is, if you decide not to contribute to capital projects, capital funds 1 year, then not only are you pushing things down the road, as the mayor's brought up, but you're setting yourself up for a slippery slope that we could just continue to make that decision every year. And I feel like, it's something worth putting a little bit in every year, even if it's not the same amount every year.
Okay. Any other questions, comments about that one?
I think we need more. Yes, we need more money in there, and I think that's the whole point, is that we've caught up on stuff with the playground equipment. And if we stop, then we're gonna fail again. So I don't disagree with, but at the same time, you have 17 priorities that all have to be number one. And you're like, the one that just hit us in the face tonight, still kind of sweating on that one. And so to say, hey, we gotta put in new playground equipment, it doesn't seem as high a priority as not losing my car in a pothole 1 year. So, I mean, to me, that's, I think, higher up there, and I think there, a lot of the people would probably agree with me on that. So, do I agree that CIP is very important? Yeah. At the same time, I don't know, like you said, if we have a strategic goal and that's what goes in there, I think that's the key thing. Maximizing grants and ramp, that's huge in my opinion. And, we need to know long lead time away when we're making these purchases, so that we know that the running tally is accurate. And so if we have to skip a year and push something down the road, at this point, you kind of have to. But I know that's the horrible thing to say, but if not, then like you said, we're raising taxes 20% a year just to fund CIP, which doesn't make sense.
Well, and this is one of those that I think needs to be in the strategic plan, because to the mayor's point, if we don't have a good plan that we're going to stick to, and every year we're going to decide if we're going to stick to it, then in 20 years, we'll still have 35 empty acres over at 2,600 and 1050. Cause we already know what that feels like, cause it's 20 years later.
Because Chris, under your thought process, and I see where you're coming from, but you'll never put money again in CIP unless something.
Correct.
happens.
Right.
Cause road thing is not.
Oh, no, yeah. So, yeah, unless you push on something else or CSO thing, we don't need that. You know, I mean, and then.
I am.
Well,
No, I just, both of you weren't listening, that's all right. I just said this.
Something about CSO.
I know, I said, no, we don't need that. We don't need that, we just need more stuff in parks, anyway.
Right. I get what
It's a trade-off, everything that we decide on is a trade-off, 100%.
and the hard thing about this, with the conversation that started the night, the one we're at right now, the optics of it is gonna look like we're saving the money. Because if we raise taxes to put into roads, to spend it on roads, we transfer it to capital improvement fund, and then we spend it out of the capital improvement fund on the roads. That's the way the money flows. So it's gonna look like we're putting $3 million into capital improvement fund, but there's gonna be zero for anything outside of roads, to the mayor's point. So optically, it'll look like we're saving a ton, even though we're spending it all that year, just because the way the money will flow through the budget.
And one of the optics that, I mean, from last year, and I don't know if anybody even noticed that sidewalks went down 100K. Well, that was one of the reasons we increased taxes, property taxes last year, was to talk about sidewalks. Now that 100K just disappears someone else. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. When we raise property taxes for one thing, it'll disappear for something else the following year.
And
So,
and this is the hard thing, because property tax, Brian Bartholomew took issue with this. We raised property tax to pay for police, to free up sales tax to pay for roads. And so it's this weird conversation that we have. And so anyways, I get your point. I always try and correct that because I want to stay true to what we said in the ordinance with the council.
But I'm confused. We didn't spend $100,000 on sidewalks, is that what you're saying? Chris?
no, I'm saying this year it just vanishes and then where does it go? So it deleted, from last year, we had 100K in sidewalks plus whatever. This year, well, the 100K has disappeared.
It's not
So
in
no.
this year's budget?
Mm-mm.
Why wouldn't it be in this year's budget?
It is in this year's budget.
No, not the full amount. Not in the yellow sheets, it wasn't.
At 17 years past, in this past year, they added 100,000 to it. So
Right.
it's a $170,000 project.
Is that what's in it this year, the 170?
I
No,
don't believe so.
Well, it should be,
well, that's what I'm saying.
yeah, it should be because we're trying to catch up on sidewalks, so why isn't that in the budget?
I don't know.
We can't.
I noted that and
Yeah,
I
we
swear
did,
we
huh?
said that, but maybe.
Okay, I'll look into that and get you an answer on that.
If it's going for something good, then, you know.
Well, yeah, the 100,000 was something that was ongoing. Because, we had like.
300, yeah. It was only a third.
sidewalks, 800,000 to 900,000. Yeah, so that can't just disappear. If it is, then we reduce property taxes by 100.
Okay, last item on the CSO, police have asked for one. Chief's focus, well, is to look at not improving our CSO department, but building it up because it takes a burden off of the officers and the officers can do the things we need the folks with the sidearm to do. But I wanted this to be part of the discussion because we have had times in the past where we predict revenues won't come in great and then they end up coming in great. And I would suggest that this and the CIP are the two items where the money should go back to if our trend is going up. And so and I'm gonna say by our October numbers, which means the numbers that we see in December, are looking positive, that I'd like to visit that with the council and have it talking about how we're gonna send money to CIP and if we could pull the trigger on a CSO officer. But Chief, maybe talk a little bit about that, understanding that I'm 5 minutes over.
I know it, and I put a thing together to show that I don't have to do it. You guys can just pass this around and look at it and let me know what you think.
Yeah.
You can't plug it in.
So they're doing, two people are doing the work of three right now. There's just no things about it's on the presentation. I can send it to you. I can email it to everybody so you can see. There's a couple of things that we can do. We're preparing for the future.
we need it right now as well. We can specialize because of all the different things that the CSOs are doing. We've got one person that's heavy on code enforcement as well as evidence. We have another one that's real heavy on animal control, but they both help each other out. We can diversify that and specialize them into code enforcement, for example, so that if there are any questions that are misanswered or not answered correctly, they're gonna be better at it. Because we have 3 people instead of 2, and we're not spreading them thin. I noticed a trend when Sean left. We had about a quarter, where we just had 1 CSO officer. And what happened was her volume went down because officers picked it up. So we have officers doing more, just like what John said. And it's half the cost of a police officer, and it will still impact our day-to-day from the sworns, from the badge side to the CSO side. So we've talked about it before. It's the same stuff that I brought up before, and I appreciate you listening to me again. But it is a good way to save money and still fulfill our strategic plan of reducing crime and the perception of crime out there. And it is a philosophy, I think. I really believe that. I've never looked at it like that before, but it's a philosophy, especially if the council decides that you would like more enforcement of code enforcement, proactive enforcement, where they can get into the car and drive around and look for violations to make sure that they're in compliance and that the city's still beautiful. And that will give them the opportunity to do it. And like I said, it's about $75,000 for benefits and wages. And that we would not, if we did it sooner than later, we would not need to get a vehicle. We would pull back one of the vehicles that we were gonna rotate out and purchase, and we would hold on to that to save money as well. It's my thought. It's still a decent truck.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, say again what the CSO does. It's animal control and
Evidence.
evidence and
And code
It's animal
enforcement.
control, it's evidence, it's code enforcement, it's reports at the front desk. It's also covering the front desk. And vacation checks, kennel, we have a kennel, and so we had 83 dogs last year. And so they have to make sure that those dogs are taken care of until they're not, until we take care of them.
We have kennels?
The new,
Just temporary.
Wow.
Temporary kennels, like transitional
Take them
kennels.
out to the Weaver County?
Ultimately, we do, but it's expensive.
It saves money for us to house them for 2 and 3 days
2
and
and
look
3
for
days
owners.
and look for the owners. Yeah, it saves us money. Yeah, that's another topic. The animal shelter is another topic. But what am I forgetting? Nate, what else do they do? I'm forgetting one more. They have about 9 things.
They're also a backup in an emergency situation. They can technically man a vehicle and shut down a road.
Right, which is what they'll do in the parade. For the Cherry Days Parade, we utilize both CSOs. We would have one, we had one. And like I said, we save money. And they do a lot. They step up and they're backup. Like John said, for just about everything, we depend on them. They man the phones, they take calls and complaints.
Mhm. Can I have another question?
Yeah.
I don't know if
It's
I'm
a rhetorical
jumping in
question.
line again. So if all of these things you're listing, if they didn't do, if the 2 CSOs right now who are doing the work of 3, if they didn't do any proactive code enforcement, there's still 2 CSOs doing the work of 3.
Yes.
So if we had 3, then that's still, it's not like we're encouraging the proactive code enforcement because they heard so many things.
Crossing guard, right?
Crossing guard, thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, it was on the tip of your tongue.
Thank
But
you.
so what you would find is more officers would be filling in
Or
for the calls.
Mhm.
With the third one, when calls are low, then they would have the time to go out and do proactive as opposed to just catch up in the other area that's missing.
Yeah, because part of Scott's implementation of all that is kind of the key thing too, and I think that would. And I wrote
workflow,
down,
the workflow
yeah,
implementation.
with the. How he was gonna do that, and I think that would be something, I'm still thinking next year, but, based on all this other stuff, I don't know.
Did you say you're thinking next year? It's like.
Well, that's what I wrote down. I said plan for next year, next FYI based on HES plan implementation. That's what I wrote down, but
I
HES
mean,
plan, is that a right word? Okay. He talked about it.
Strategic plan.
Cause I've had kind of that same feeling. I mean, when you look at what we're.
Trying to deal with.
Look at what we're trying to accomplish. And Chief, you know, I'm very supportive of the police officers. Like, I think I would rather maybe take a look at it again next year.
I think the key thing is that I know we know it's needed. Just based on, you said 2, I think 1 year, and then I can't remember, that was the first time you briefed us. I think you said, we really need 2.
Yeah,
So you've come down, so I know.
well, I took all this into consideration and learned more about budgeting. The police department and know that, you know, that we can do it incrementally, like you're talking about, but a decision needs to be made.
Yeah.
And one is it's necessary.
And
I
I
think-
feel if it's necessary, then we need to figure out a way to make it happen.
Yeah.
I think to me, it comes back, somehow it plays into whether or not this road fund is incorporated in our tax increase. Because to me, if you've got the road fund as a fee and it's separate, and then you have, I don't know what this would make it. If we're already at 4 and it makes it 6 or something. But do you see what I'm saying? Like to go from 4 to 6 is more reasonable with the fee as a fee, rather than to go from 4 to 46%.
It's, and I get what you're saying, and I don't, it's again, that conversation of it's all coming out of the same pot,
Right. I
out
mean,
of
it
everyone's
is,
bank
but-
account, but, so you'd need 3% to cover the 75 grand. So you go from a 4 to a 7, and then from a 7 to a whatever for roads,
Yeah.
one way or another.
I know it's the 100K from the sidewalks. It's gotta be somewhere. So
That was a good catch, because
Great catch.
that $100,000 is supposed to be in there every year.
Someplace.
I don't think it's in there apparently.
We can cover it with that, with the.
Well, so
sidewalk
he didn't put it
center.
in there.
All right.
Is it possible to hire them by, like you said, maybe January, and then it's only half of 74? I'm trying to do quick math,
Yeah,
37.
but then there's the ongoing expense.
There, yeah. Then it's easier to, because if we say, let's wait till next year, the next year's gonna come around and say, well, let's wait till next year. We've got to bite the bullet sometime. I shouldn't say that. We got to just do it sometime.
Bite the bullet.
They don't even carry guns, see, so.
Oh, yeah, okay. No, we just got, I mean, if we just, it's the same thing. If we don't repair roads today, we just keep kicking it down the road. It's never gonna get done.
Well, part of my concern is just, you know, in my line of work, we just don't know what's gonna happen in the immediate future with the ripple of the economy, you know? So I'm just, in that case, I just put I put that one in a little lower.
What else, John?
That was the last thing on my list.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, John, for that discussion. Item number 6 on our agenda is further public comments. If anyone would like to make a public comment this evening or online, please raise your hand if you're online, and if you're here, please stand up, tell us your name. If you're a North Ogden citizen, and please limit your comment to no longer than 5 minutes.
Thanks, sir. Kevin Burns, I am a North Ogden resident. I made notes tonight. I had to keep borrowing Phil's pen. So I'm sorry, Citizen Phil. I keep hearing Citizen Phil, so.
2 L's.
To talk about the transportation fee or the tax, call it what you want. It's a tax. The fee, call it a fee, call it a tax. It's a tax. I can opt out of a fee. If I want to go to Cemetery Point in the summer, they charge a fee to get in. So if I don't want to pay the fee, I don't go. And if I can't opt out of it, it's a tax. So call it what you want. And we keep hearing about, you know, property taxes by ordinance go for public safety. And so it's by ordinance, and an ordinance can change. Just work it through and change the ordinance. Part of that ordinance might be for roads. We talked about that tonight. So That's okay too. The 401ks, the employees taking advantage of those opportunities. When I was a young employee at the county, I had an old captain that sent me to personnel to sign up and put in and start my 3%. And at the time, it seemed difficult. Hey, times are tough. After a couple of paychecks, never noticed it missing. And after 30 years, I was so happy that old captain sent me to personnel. And so it's, if as leadership, you're not doing something like that for your employees in any department, you're missing something that you can offer to those employees. A few weeks ago, I had a great opportunity to sit through a URS presentation. That's your retirement system. And I thought to myself, I wish I would have sat through that 30 years ago. And that's a free service that URS offers. And at one point in another life, I made it part of my employees' annual review. One of their goals, didn't matter how long they'd been an employee, one of their goals was to attend a retirement seminar and get started. And that was very helpful. And I had guys fight it, and when they walked away, they were thankful. So the pool open on Sundays. June is a tough time to operate a pool, but maybe when we look at Sundays, maybe we experiment with just maybe July and August and see if we can, fit it in when we know we're going to have a good crowd, because this weather's going to be a little more cooperative. And to finish off, you are going to be very unpopular people over the next few months. It's nothing personal, just business.
So what's changed?
You're going to make it's why do you do that? But you're going to have to make a very ugly decision. You already know what the decision is. You can tap dance around it all you want. You are going to be very unpopular. And meetings like this tonight, this is why you don't have time to organize cherry days. This is the stuff, this is what you're paid for. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that.
Anyone else? Anyone online, John, that has their hand raised? Bill with 2 L's, go ahead.
Thank you. S. Neil Berube.
You're welcome.
As we were on our hayride tonight, as we were coming up Fruitland, before we made our turn there, some of you heard me make a fun little comment that going along 2600 was a Ford F-450 crew cab, flatbed with a gooseneck trailer and flip down ramps that would haul 2 very nicely built Jeeps. And I said, there goes my lottery rig, right? Now I bring that up because while, if I were to win the lottery, I would certainly have a rig like that. I don't try to make my current budget accommodate what I would like to do if I had the lottery. And I think as a council, you need to be careful that we're not trying to salvage things that we would like with budget that we don't have. We need to be focused on the necessities and the essentials and take care of those first. And if we can find a grant, then we figure out what to do with that money. We shouldn't be planning what to do with the grants that we don't even know exist. We look for them. We hope that they're out there, just like I hope when I go to Wyoming and I spend that $2, it's a whole $2 on a lottery ticket, and I have a 1 in an 87 million chance of actually winning. I'm not making plans based on that actually happening. And I think we have to be careful. There was some talk tonight about that we're pushing things down the road, right? That we just defer. Well, we're in the place we are with the roads and with a lot of other things in the city because for decades, not just recently, but for decades, deferral was the name of the game with city council and with our city leadership. That yearly small tax increase was never considered because we didn't want to go there. When, if you think about it, for the last 30 years, if we'd had a 2 to 3% property tax increase, over the certified rate every year for the last 30 years, we wouldn't be in quite the budget that we are now, and there'd be a lot of things taken care of in the city that we are struggling to try to take care of now. So just remember as you're budgeting that focus on those essentials. Let's keep the lottery rigs where they belong in those lottery rigs, and we have to stay ahead of the game. We a 50-cent increase at the pool, that doesn't even cover inflation cost. It doesn't even come close to the increased cost, so we're actually falling behind. And I know it's tough. It's tough on families. It's tough on everyone right now. Anyway, I could go on forever. You guys know that. Thanks.
Mr. Swanson,
Yes, sir.
just curious, it seems like we asked the budget committee to submit what they felt were not essential to your point.
Yep.
Have you received anything?
I have from a couple, and I will forward that to John.
That would be good, because I think that outside perspective of what outside thinks is necessities versus, it'd be nice to reconcile that, because I think as the council liaisons have gone through their respective budgets, I'm not sure they've identified anything that should be taken out yet that would be not essential, so we'd appreciate that perspective, what they're saying.
And often it's not essential versus non-essential. It's a ranked hierarchy of essential items where everything's kind of essential, but if you got to live without something, your pinky toe's a good way to start.
Right. Okay, good. Thank you.
Nope.
Nope. Anyone else here? Okay. We'll move on then. The mayor, council, and staff comments. John, I would appreciate it if you would respond to Sandy's thing about the comments. I think that's something that probably ought to be discussed so that the city knows what the thought process was there and what happened.
Yeah, so, the
37 seconds. Because you're already,
so, the conversation, so that the decision was entrusted to the person in charge of Facebook. They talked with me as the PIO and the city attorney. I'm okay with it. In fact, it's the decision I would make if I was running Facebook. And legally, we're allowed to turn off comments if we turn off all comments. Where you get in trouble is when you cherry pick and start, I used the right word earlier in my email and I forgot it now. But if it's based,
Trolls.
well, no, if it's based on the specific comment, if you have to read the comment to know if it's allowed or not, then you're violating the First Amendment. But, and this, some of my information is from case laws, but the best information was on the ACLU's website that said, if you allow comments, you have to allow all comments, but it's if you allow comments. So you're not required to, based on my reading of everything. And then this will translate a little bit into council meetings, because there are people who are starting to troll councils with the goal of getting kicked out, getting arrested, and then suing the cities. And so that is something that we'll have some training on moving forward about, as a public official, what you have to put up with in a public meeting. But like I said, I support the decision. Legally, we're on safe ground, in my opinion. There is that overarching policy that technically the council does have the authority to set the policy for the city. On this one, I think it's problematic because of the trolls, because of the content that's getting thrown out there. We had one of our employees, swear words were used, just because there was a picture of our employee with, I don't want to give
horse
any more details, but they were called horse crap. And it was a positive, uplifting post. And everything's turned very negative, and I'm not sure that there's anything coming in those comments that is useful to the city. Although I do understand that sometimes people will comment and just tag their friend so that their friend knows that something's happening. But it seems like we're getting a lot more trolls and negativity. Our dog was besmirched because it found drugs that aren't drugs. That's a medicinal thing, but they were drugs. And so there was even, you could argue, some promotion of illegal substances on our website by allowing comments. So the decision was made to just eliminate comments. And it also helps with the 24/7 expectation of managing it and watching for problematic things that we would legally be allowed to eliminate. So that's my recommendation based on the recommendation from the staff member in charge, is that we continue with it. But council sets policy and can override all of us. If you want to discuss it at a future meeting, we'd be happy to.
I would like to discuss this in a future meeting. I understand all the reasons. I understand what you're saying. People really want to be able to comment on the page to be heard. And I, as a city councilor, I regularly go to that page. And even if I don't respond to comments, I look at feedback and I look at things that are going on there. And I understand that there's negativity. I understand that there's trolls, but I don't know. I think comments need to be allowed on that page. And I understand you probably have some very specific things that have happened recently that made you feel like we got to shut this down. We got to not allow comments. But I created my city council Facebook page. And when I advised you about it, that I was creating that page, you said, hey, as long as you don't delete any comments, then you're safe. And I have never deleted a comment on my personal, not my personal, but my city council personal Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
And because I know that that's a rule to abide by. And if somebody says something nasty on that page, it's going to stay there. I don't know. I just don't feel good about it. I don't feel good about not having comments on the city Facebook page.
I think too, if the council decides to have comments on there, the expectation needs to be set that city's not gonna respond.
And I think that's
If
totally okay.
If they want a response and they have the ability, there's many things they can comment, either joining the city council, coming online, writing in. But the problem we get into is the expected response. And so whatever the council decides, because I'm all for comments that are constructive. But what we get into is destructive comments. There's no purpose, obviously, for a lot of the comments that are made. And that's fine if they want to put them out there, but they shouldn't expect a response from the city. And I think that's where we've got to clarify whatever the council decides to do. Because I'm all for people. I've always said, you know, I don't care if they disagree with me, but people ought to start being a little bit respectful and respectably disagreeing instead of just trying to create havoc. And so as long as they understand the city's not going to respond, because what happens when we start responding, it just digs a deeper hole. And, you know, I don't get on Facebook a lot, but I do. When I do, I ask myself, what's the reason for their comment? You know, why are they doing this? And they have the right to do whatever they want, but we also have the right not to respond. Because all it does is dig a deeper hole, as we have all learned. When you try to defend the position, it just turns into a social
quagmire.
So whatever you decide, I'm not afraid of getting comments, but I think, people need to start asking, what's their motivation in making the comments? Doing that.
And with our policy, with the council member requesting it to be on there, we'll put it on an agenda. So just as a reminder, any council member can add something to the agenda. If it's a resident presentation, it takes 2 council members. That just, sometimes we get a little.
I think it's good to have a discussion, as long as the expectations are set. Okay. Sorry, Sandy, we're off public comments.
I know, but he was responding to my thing, so it's okay.
We can talk after. Okay.
Okay.
Steve, you got anything?
Are you looking at me?
Katie?
Do I have can I say something?
Yeah, oh yeah, we're under staff comments.
Okay, so I don't have a problem with anybody knowing that it's me that runs our Facebook page. I'm very proud of the site that we created from where it was multiple years ago. I feel like our page is for information purposes, and it's turned into a lot of negativity. Again, I don't care who comments on the page. However, when it affects our employees, or the work that our employees are doing and people are slandering our employees, that's where I have the problem. And again, you can't turn one comment off. So again, if you say something very thoughtful, that I love seeing that. Obviously, we love seeing that. But then you have Joe Schmo over here that's calling our employees nasty names, not you.
Kevin, what the heck, Joe Schmo?
But you have people calling our employees nasty names, and we can't turn that off. And so we have your very thoughtful comment, and then we have a very hurtful comment for our employees. And I will be flat out honest with you, it ruins morale for our employees. We have dang good employees who bust their tails every single day coming here. And when they're proud of the work they've done, or they are excited for something that they've done and they get online, because I will tell you, most of our employees have Facebook pages that follow our page, and they see those comments, that tears someone down faster than anything. And so for me to make that decision and to talk with John about making that decision to cover our employees and their mental health and their sanity, that's why that was made. It was not because of the positivity that we get. That's awesome. We love it. It's for the negative, and I'm sorry, but sometimes the negative outweighs the good. And it's hurtful. It's harmful. So that's why that was made. So.
Thank you, Katie,
Yeah.
for those comments. And, yeah, it does degrade to personal attacks, which are totally inappropriate. I mean, once again, people can disagree, and we do appreciate the feedback. But I always have to ask the question, what was their motivation? But if I don't have any problem with comments, but it does to Katie's. And it's just not that, spouses get attacked on there, and it's just totally ridiculous. But anyway, we live in a free world and people can make whatever comments they like. I did check with other staff members other than you, John. Do you have anything else?
Nope, nothing else.
Okay, council, do you have anything else? Mr. Barker?
I just wanna say that I know that a lot of our employees watch city council usually on YouTube, so we can't see who's watching. So it's great to see people in the audience and names on the screen. So it is great that our staff and our employees do watch what we're doing. And so
Okay,
I just
thank
like
you.
them to know that I was paying attention to them.
We see you.
I see you.
Anyone else have any comments?